Toward evening, I was relaxing on the back deck with my brother-in-law, Paul. We were enjoying some drinks while grilling steaks, chicken, sausages, and some onions and cheese for the hungry folks inside. In the kitchen, the women were preparing salads, side dishes, and bread for our laid-back evening meal. I could hear Melody setting the table while Kim and Harmony worked together in the kitchen. My in-laws, William and Martha, were helping to get the kids cleaned up and seated for dinner. I then heard a car approaching, followed by the soft ring of the doorbell and a knock at the door. A few minutes later, my father, John, came out back after dropping off some apple pies and a big tub of ice cream for dessert in the kitchen. He clapped me on the back and asked, "How are you boys?" as he opened the fridge on the deck to grab a drink. "Great, Dad. Did I hear you come in with the new car?" "Yes. It sounds amazing." Dad had recently retired and treated himself to a brand new convertible. After losing my mom a few years back, it was just him now. He had worked hard all his life and deserved to enjoy himself a little. "It really does, John. You will have to take me for a ride soon," Paul said, dreaming of having a car like that, even though it seemed impossible with 3 kids at home. We chatted a bit more about Dad's new car as we finished cooking the food. We placed everything in trays covered with foil, and each of us carried everything back inside to start our meal. Apparently, I missed the doorbell again. We had 2 unexpected visitors. As I walked into the room, I noticed the mix of reactions from everyone. The kids were excited and hungry, smelling the sausages. Melody and Harmony looked confused. They had a faint idea of who our visitors might be, but had never met them before. Paul and Kim looked upset, while Dad seemed troubled. As for me, I felt a whirlwind of emotions, surprise, disappointment, anger, fear, and shock. It was so overwhelming that I dropped the tray of meat I was holding. The clang of the tray hitting the floor brought everyone's attention to me. "Hi, Terry," said Carol, my ex-wife, looking right at me. She was tired and out of shape, and over the last few years, she had gained weight in ways that made her look different. Her once attractive curves were hidden under layers of extra weight. I, on the other hand, was still fit, and probably even more so than when we last saw each other. I could tell by the way she looked at me that she was surprised to see me. When she showed up, without warning, I knew she had no clue how any of us would react, but it would not be a joyful moment. The second person with her also looked at me. "Hi, Daddy," Mackenzie, my former daughter, said before I could say anything. She wore a faded baseball cap that I had given her on her 13th birthday. Mackenzie looked nothing like the girl who had hurt me years ago. If anything, she seemed fragile, just like her mother. For what felt like a long moment, we all just stared at each other. The noise from the kids at the table was the only sound. Even they sensed something was off and noticed the 2 unexpected guests. I sighed, picked up the tray of meat I had dropped, and placed it on the table. I glanced at Martha, who understood who they were and was giving them a stern look. "Martha, can you get the kids some food? I think this could take a while." She stopped glaring at Carol and Mackenzie, her expression softening as she looked at me. Martha knew my struggles better than anyone here. She had supported me through much of what had happened over the years. I sensed that Carol and Mackenzie had felt Martha's sharpness before, even if I didn't know all the details. Martha's focus quickly shifted to making sure the kids were taken care of, putting aside thoughts of my former family for now. "No problem, Terry. You handle this. I will take care of the kids." I turned back to my ex-family and let my face show my irritation. "For the sake of the children here, I won't say everything I want right now, but you need to understand that you are not welcome here." I struggled to keep my voice steady, and my words came out harsher than I intended. Carol looked hurt, while Mackenzie seemed on the verge of tears. At that moment, Kim had come to stand next to me. Melody and Harmony positioned themselves on my other side, with Melody holding my hand to show her support. She now understood that these visitors, like her sister Harmony, had a good sense of what I was probably feeling. Carol sighed deeply and scanned the room before her eyes settled back on me. There was a time, many years ago, when I cherished those eyes and loved looking into them. But now all I could see was a mask of pain and regret, which startled me. "We know, Terry, but we need to talk to you." Oh no. Growing up, if I wasn't at school or with friends, I was on the job site with my dad, earning a little extra money. I always helped with digging or carrying materials. At school, I worked hard but wasn't top of the class. My report cards were decent, but I wasn't going to be a straight A student. However, I was skilled with my hands, and it showed in shop class. Dad was a plumber, mainly working on homes, supporting a few builders, and sometimes taking on commercial jobs. The work was good where we lived in Maitland. Dad often had a lot of projects, keeping him busy. He had one apprentice, and then there was me when I was available. I was pretty sure I would become a plumber too. I had the build for it and picked things up quickly once Dad showed me. I met Carol in junior high and we started dating the next year. I thought there was a good connection between us. We laughed at the same jokes, enjoyed similar music, and liked the same movies. Carol was a slim blonde with brown eyes and a friendly smile. Most people would say she was the girl next door, not a model, but she could attract attention if she wanted. My name is Terry Other. I am tall and strong, thanks to working with my dad. I have short brown hair, brown eyes, and broad shoulders, from a mix of good genes and hard work on the job site. To keep it short, toward the end of high school, Carol and I took an important step in our relationship. I would love to say it was amazing, but we were both a bit awkward. Still, we figured it out and spent a lot of time together afterward. The trouble began when Carol found out she was pregnant. There were tears and some upset parents, but we ended up engaged after graduating high school. Not long after our wedding, Mackenzie was born. I loved Carol, but nothing made me prouder than being Mackenzie's dad. If I wasn't working, I was spending time with her. I was there when she took her first steps, and her first word was Dad. Growing up, she liked to come to the job site with me, just like I did with my dad. Carol didn't always love it, but it gave her some time for herself without having to worry about a child. When it came to Carol and me, our relationship had its challenges. We did a lot together and I cared for her, but we also needed to put in effort. That seemed to be true for many couples. After Mackenzie was born, I sometimes felt like I was in Carol's way. She never said anything directly, but by the time Mackenzie turned 3, I felt like Carol looked down on me for being a plumber. We were friendly and loving, and our relationship had its good moments. There were times we shared intimacy often, and other times when life was busy, we went weeks without. Overall, I thought we were a good couple until one day, 15 years later, when I came home from work. I had become a master plumber, certified in different areas of plumbing, and like my father, I worked with several builders. I had started to take on more commercial projects than my dad did, and things were going pretty well for us. As a family, we were reasonably comfortable, and neither Carol nor Mackenzie went without their needs or most of their wants. On that day, I parked my truck in the driveway of our modest 3-bedroom house. Carol's car was not there, so I guessed she wasn't home yet. I took off my dirty shoes and entered the house, which felt empty. Some furniture, pictures, and appliances were missing. At first I thought we might have been robbed, but nothing seemed disturbed, and my work laptop and the TV were still there. I tried to call Carol, but it went to voicemail. "Carol, I just got home. and it seems like a lot of things are missing. Call me when you get a chance." As I entered the kitchen, I saw the table was still there, but in the middle was a stack of papers with a letter on top. I knew then that something was wrong, and I felt a wave of sickness wash over me. The letter addressed to Terry felt like it was staring at me, and I could sense that this was not good news. With neither of my girls home and so much missing, I knew the evening was going to be difficult. I pulled out a chair and opened the letter. I understood that I could avoid it for a while, but I had to read it, so I decided to get it over with. Carol wrote, "Terry, by the time you read this, Mackenzie and I will have moved out of the house. I wish I were strong enough to face you, but honestly, I can't bear to see the look of betrayal on your face right now. I didn't want to have a long talk, so I chose to write this instead. There's no easy way to say this, but I have fallen in love with another man who makes me happier than I ever was with you. And today, both Mackenzie and I have moved in with him. You probably have a lot of questions, so I will share some important details to help you understand why you shouldn't try to contact Mackenzie or me. Your first question will be about who. He is Mackenzie's doctor, and I chose him because he can take care of us in ways you cannot as a plumber. The next question might be how long. I've been seeing Stephen for a year and a half. It was hard to keep it a secret from you, and both Mackenzie and I often thought you would catch on, but you didn't. I wish I could say I'm sorry, but am really not, and nothing I say can change how you might be feeling right now. Finally, you may want to know why. That's a tough question, but it comes down to your job. You're a plumber, and he's a doctor. He has the ability to provide us with more than you can. You have been a loving father and a good husband. But for Mackenzie and me, it's not enough. I know you'll have many questions, but that's all I'm sharing for now. About the divorce, there are a few important things to note. First, I've taken all the furniture I want and everything else is yours. Mackenzie has her room as she won't be spending time with you for reasons I'll explain in a moment. I have already split our finances and taken half of our savings. I will also need half the equity in the house, and our lawyers can sort that out later. The second document is adoption papers for Mackenzie. Stephen is going to adopt her, and that's the plan we have made. So don't misunderstand. If you sign these, you won't need to pay child support. Right now, I know you must be feeling heartbroken, but this is how we want it. The last document is a restraining order that will be in place until the divorce is completed. This means you need to stay away from Stephen, Mackenzie, and me until everything is sorted out. I regret that things have turned out this way, but sadly, a plumber's income can't support us like a doctor's can. So this is the choice we have made. Goodbye, Terry. Carol. I must have sat there for a long time unsure of how to feel. My emotions were mixed. I couldn't understand what to think at that moment, seeing that both my wife and daughter had left me without any warning. If the letter was true, this situation had been going on for a year and a half, while I was unaware. I read the letter 3 times before I heard a knock on the door. Slowly, I got up and answered it. It was my older sister, Kim. "Terry, Carol texted me saying you were feeling unwell and needed help." She looked at me, and suddenly all my feelings came rushing back. I sank to the ground at the entrance, crying. "They're gone." She sat down beside me. "What do you mean they're gone?" "Terry, what's happening?" I still had the letter in my hand, and I gave it to Kim. She read it while I sat beside her. Her face turned red as she finished the letter. "Those awful people," she nearly shouted. "That selfish woman and her ungrateful daughter." I was surprised by her anger. While Carol and Kim were not very close, they were friendly. Kim had always supported Mackenzie when she needed help. Now it all makes sense. She looked down at me. Come on, little brother. We need to get you sorted out. Sitting here and feeling sorry for yourself isn't going to help. Let's get moving. She took me to the bathroom and started the shower for me. I was still in my dirty clothes from work. She told me to clean up and come back to the kitchen. I spent about 10 minutes in the shower, letting the warm water soothe me. I found myself feeling very sorry for myself and confused about what I had done to lose my wife and daughter in an instant. When I stepped out of the shower, I could hear Kim complaining in the kitchen. I dried off, got dressed, and went to join her. She was sitting down and going through each of the papers that Carol had left behind. When she saw me, she looked frustrated. Usually I wouldn't like someone going through legal papers, but Kim was more than just my sister. She was also my lawyer. As I sat down, she reached over and placed her hand on mine. How are you doing, Terry? I looked at her. I don't know, Kim. I think I'm in shock. I never saw this coming. I don't know what I did to make both my wife and daughter leave without warning. There was nothing even this morning before I left the house. Carol gave me a quick kiss, and Mackenzie hugged me and wished me a good day. Nothing made me think this would happen. I gestured to the papers on the table. Kim frowned. Terry, after looking at these papers, I see they are very detailed. It's clear they spent a lot of time preparing them, so this is definitely not a quick decision. It seems well thought out and very cold, but it also highlights a few things. Like what? Well, I didn't notice it before, but over the last few months, Carol has asked me several times about how your finances are set up. She inquired about the difference between your business and personal finances. I thought she was hinting at wanting to make improvements to the house or save more for Mackenzie's future. But now it seems it was all about this. She waved her hand at the divorce papers in front of her. Now I understand why Carol wanted me here tonight. She knew I would represent you, and based on what I see here, she wants everything finished quickly so she can marry Stephen Morrison. I nodded. What about Mackenzie and the adoption she mentioned? Her mood turned serious. This is the worst thing they have done. It takes away your chance to be a father. This document, she picked up another large paper, is a completed adoption plan. These things can take time to reach this point. Out of 4 signatures needed, Stephen, Carol, and Mackenzie have signed. It only needs yours, and then Stephen Morrison will legally adopt her once Carol marries him. I nodded again, feeling lost. There isn't much I can do, is there? There is a lot, but it would be expensive, and honestly, given how Carol and Mackenzie have handled this, I don't think it's worth the effort. And Terry, it's not just Carol. Your little princess has been involved in this from almost the start, if I read these papers correctly. They've really blindsided you, little brother. I kept nodding silently, looking down at my hand in my sister's. Kim squeezed my hand. Terry, look at me. I met her gaze. Right now, you're feeling numb, like you said before. I think your mind is in shock, and I know it's tempting to use something to escape, but I don't want you to. She smiled, but it was a strange smile. I want you to come with me to the hospital. Hospital? Why? As your sister, I want to make sure you're okay, but as your lawyer, I need you to trust me. So she packed up the papers, helped me into her car, and took me to the hospital. I had no idea that trip would change my life. Kim drove me to the hospital, and we didn't talk much on the way. I stared out the window, wondering what I had done to deserve this. Finally, we arrived. We joined the waiting line. It was early evening, so it wasn't too busy. Kim had asked for a specific doctor, so we were told we might need to wait a while. As we sat, Kim went over the paperwork while I browsed Facebook on my phone. I noticed that both Carol and Mackenzie had removed and blocked me. I was a little surprised, though I guess I shouldn't have been. They had cut me out of their lives without a second thought. I spent time in some groups, replied to a couple of emails, all because I had nothing else to do. We had been sitting for around 45 minutes when I finally put my phone away. I noticed an older lady walk in. She had bright red hair and striking green eyes. Her skin was very fair and she looked good for someone I thought was in her mid-40s. She walked with crutches because her left leg was in a cast. As she approached us, one of her crutches got stuck on the edge of a hospital chair, causing her to lose her balance and start falling. Without thinking, I jumped up from my seat and rushed to catch her. I managed to grab her around the waist, so she landed on me instead of the hard floor. We both let out a grunt as we fell. After a moment, I helped her get back up. She seemed embarrassed, sorry, and very grateful. I guided her to a seat next to Kim and me while a nurse who saw the fall came over to check on us. The nurse had a kind voice, soothing and full of care. She spoke to the woman. "I'm fine, dear. This young man here saved me." I felt a bit shy at 32. It had been a while since anyone called me young. The nurse looked into her information and soon returned to say she was checked in and that her doctor would come to see her shortly. We chatted for a few minutes, and I learned her name was Martha. She told me her husband, William, was parking the car after dropping her off at the main door, wanting to minimize her walking. They were from out of town, down Bathurst Way, and she had accidentally broken her ankle about a week ago. This was her last checkup before they could drive home. A few minutes later, her husband joined us. We shook hands, and Martha introduced us. It was clear they shared a deep connection, holding hands tenderly. In our conversation, I discovered that William owned a well-known plumbing supply company in the county, which I had used often. We soon found ourselves talking about work and enjoying the discussion, helping me forget my worries for a bit. When the topic of why we were there came up, I hesitated, and Kim stepped in. "It's a little personal, so I hope you don't mind," she said. William and Martha nodded in understanding. "Terry is having a really tough day. He came home this afternoon to find his house empty. His wife and daughter left him for another man, leaving only a letter that ended their relationship. Along with divorce papers, he also found some troubling documents. So I brought him here for help since he seems in shock," Kim explained gently. William and Martha looked at me with concern. At that moment, I felt numb as Kim shared my story. As Kim shared her thoughts with my permission, Martha gently placed her hand on my arm. A tear rolled down her cheek. "Oh, Terry, I can't believe they did this to you. You are clearly a kind and caring person. It takes someone special to reach out and help others like you helped me just a little while ago. We may not know you well, but you don't deserve this from two people you care about." I didn't know how to respond, but my big sister Kim spoke up. "He has always shown love and kindness to those girls for years. His wife wrote in her letter that being a plumber isn't good enough for them, and that the doctor they left him for can give them so much more." William shook his head in disbelief. Kim continued. "I don't know who this Stephen Morrison is, but his actions suggest he lacks good morals." I noticed both William and Martha react sharply to her words. "Did you say Stephen Morrison?" William asked. "Yes, Dr. Stephen Morrison," Kim replied, tilting her head slightly with a raised eyebrow. "Why do you ask?" William exchanged a brief glance with Martha, who gave a small nod. "Excuse me." William stood and walked to the reception desk. Kim and I looked at Martha, sensing something was happening. "William just went to switch my doctor. I was supposed to see Dr. Morrison for my checkup," Martha explained. Now it was Kim's and my turn to gasp. "William and I have certain standards. After hearing what you shared, Terry, I refuse to be treated by someone who would act so unkindly by taking someone's wife and child like he did to you. We will find a new doctor." A few minutes later, William returned to sit next to Martha. Moments later, Dr. Stephen Morrison appeared, looking for answers. When he saw William and Martha, he said, "I'm sorry, Mr. and Mrs. DeLotis. I've been told you have—" Then he turned and noticed me. Dr. Morrison was a bit older and heavy-set, with short, sandy blonde hair. He was a head shorter than me and had a round belly. He walked with an air of confidence, as if he had everything handed to him in life. When he looked at me, he suddenly focused on me and dismissed William and Martha. His gaze made me feel uncomfortable, as if I were old leftovers. "You, Terry Other, aren't allowed to be here." His tone was sharp and unfriendly, completely ignoring any kindness he should have shown. Kim stood up and stepped between Stephen and me. "Dr. Morrison, I am Kim Other, Terry's older sister and his lawyer. I want to make it clear that we didn't know who you were, or that you worked here until just now." If Kim's words made him think twice, he didn't show it. In fact, the sneer on his face grew even sharper. "That doesn't matter. He's breaking a restraining order and needs to leave right now." "As you wish, Dr. Morrison. I will make a note of this conversation and your requests. We are leaving now, and will find treatment for Terry elsewhere." Stephen laughed, but it wasn't a friendly laugh. He seemed to enjoy kicking someone when they were down. "Treatment? For what? For being a loser?" He puffed out his chest. "His wife and kid left him for someone better. Pathetic." I noticed everyone in the waiting room, including William and Martha, looked at him sharply, but he didn't stop. With how he is, it's no surprise he needs help. But he won't get it here since he's not welcome in this hospital. Now, leave before I call security." Kim nodded. "I will note your words and your negative remarks about Mr. Other, and since we now know you are here, we are leaving in accordance with the restraining order," she said. I felt my anger rising. Here was the man who had harmed my family, who had taken my wife and tried to take my child. I stood, hands clenched. I could easily confront him, but as I took a step forward, William stopped me. He placed a hand on my shoulder and shook his head, reminding me to keep my cool. Stephen turned to William and Martha, ignoring me now. His tone changed. "Mr. and Mrs. DeLotis, please follow me for your checkup. Do not let what this man said influence your treatment." William shook his head again, his hand still on my shoulder as Kim packed up her things. "I'm sorry, Dr. Morrison. However, after seeing how you spoke just now, I cannot allow my wife to be treated by someone who disrespects others, especially in a place meant for healing. We will seek treatment elsewhere." He turned and helped Martha stand up. Once she had her crutches, the four of us made our way to the front entrance. As the sliding doors opened, William paused and addressed Stephen one final time. "Dr. Morrison, please let the hospital director and your regional director know that from this moment on, my financial support will be pulled from this hospital and its nearby health centers. Instead, I will direct it to other medical places where the staff are more professional. When they ask why, you'll know what to say." With that, he turned back to us and left Stephen standing there, looking lost and with his mouth open. The four of us decided to go to a private hospital just a few minutes away. Sadly, they didn't have an emergency room. However, they were open, and it seemed that William's name made a difference. We were seen by a doctor named Dr. Marge Hill. I made sure Martha went in first, and after a few minutes, she came out saying she was fine to go home. When it was my turn for a checkup, Kim came with me and quickly explained what had happened. Dr. Hill did several tests and took some blood samples. "Mr. Other, the tests show that you're experiencing a mild shock from today's events. Your sister wants to make sure you're physically and mentally okay. Many people don't realize that such events can affect their body and mind, and they often wait to get checked. Marge smiled at me, saying, "She cares about you." After the tests and blood work were done, we returned to the waiting area, and I was surprised to see William and Martha still there waiting for us. We chatted for a few minutes, and they wanted to make sure I was all right. Kim let them know I would be fine and thanked them for their concern. We exchanged contact information, and Martha made me promise to call them each week to share how I was doing. I agreed and managed to keep that promise over the next 6 months. When Kim got me home, she helped me to bed and made sure I took my first medication, which would help me sleep and lift my spirits a bit. She tucked me in, kissed my forehead, and said she would check on me in the morning. I fell into a deep sleep and didn't wake up until the next day. The following months felt like a strange dream that I couldn't shake off. My days consisted of going to work and then coming back to an empty house. After reviewing the papers, Kim spoke with Carol and Mackenzie's lawyer. Reluctantly, I signed the divorce and adoption papers with just a few small changes. The lawyer mentioned that Mackenzie was happy with Stephen and that I didn't need to be her father anymore. About a month before our final court date for the divorce, 2 things happened. First, it was my 33rd birthday. I received messages from friends, including a call from Martha, who wished me a happy birthday on behalf of herself and William. Kim and her husband Paul took me out for dinner with my parents. I was grateful, but felt quiet. I had really hoped to hear from my daughter, but I got nothing. No calls or messages. I thought about calling her, but I didn't want to get into trouble because of the rules between us. A week later was Mackenzie's 15th birthday. I knew I could get in trouble if I reached out, so I stayed quiet. That evening, around 9, I received a text from an unknown number. "You should call me to wish me a happy birthday and tell me what you got me." I was stunned. It was clear that this was Mackenzie. For almost 15 years, she was always so excited about my birthday, showering me with hugs and little gifts. Our birthdays were close together, and we had a tradition of making each other feel special. But this year, I didn't even get a message on my birthday, even though she knew I might be feeling down. Now, on her special day, she wanted me to call and tell her about her gift. I couldn't help but think about where the caring little girl I once knew had gone. I didn't reply to her message, but in my anger, I punched a wall and accidentally made a hole in it. I spent the rest of the evening icing my sore knuckles. The next day, Kim came over to check on me. She saw my hurt hand, the hole in the wall, and how upset I looked. When she asked me what happened, I showed her the message. She hugged me tightly and said she understood. "Don't worry, Terry. I didn't get her a gift either." I looked down at my injured hand. "I did." "Oh, Terry," she said softly. "I'm really sorry. I know this is tough for you." She held me in a hug for half an hour. Not long after, we had our day in court. I sat beside Kim while Carol was with her lawyers. Stephen was there too, watching from the other side of the courtroom. He kept staring at me while Carol wouldn't even look my way. Mackenzie was at school and wouldn't be present for this part. When the judge entered, both sides made their final statements. Our lawyers submitted our agreed finances from when Carol and Mackenzie left. The judge reviewed everything. He had seen most of the documents before, but now he focused on the updates. "In the case of the divorce between Mr. Terry Other and Mrs. Carol Other, I grant the petition for divorce," he said. Carol, Stephen, and her team all looked relieved. The judge raised his hand to continue. "I have a few points to discuss about the divorce petition. First, this court sees many divorce cases, but I rarely see a spouse leaving someone who is a good partner and parent. It is also unusual to talk about adoption during a divorce. So, when I notice something feels off, I pay closer attention to the reasons and requests involved. Carol's legal team looked worried as they watched the judge. Kim and I stayed quiet. Even though there is no legal reason to stop this divorce, I must express my disappointment with Mrs. Carol Other and her daughter. It is wrong to mislead a caring man for months, and to plan to leave him while limiting his time with his daughter. I also have statements from Mr. and Mrs. Delotiz about an event that happened on the night of the separation. The judge looked at me. Mr. Arthur showed great character. When faced with Dr. Stephen Morrison, who is named in the restraining order, he chose to step back and avoid conflict. As I mentioned, there is no legal reason to deny this divorce. However, based on the requests from both sides, here is how the assets will be divided. I noticed Carol and her team tense up. Kim was focused on the judge, clearly surprised. The judge continued. Mrs. Carol Other will receive half of the savings from the joint accounts that Mr. and Mrs. Other held. This transfer has already taken place, and those accounts are now closed. Next, the request to transfer the university funds for Ms. Mackenzie Other, amounting to $142,000, to Mrs. Carol Other for her daughter's support, is denied. Everyone reacted in shock. Your Honor, I object, Carol's lawyer stated firmly. Objection overruled, the judge replied. Financial records show that Mr. John Other contributed all the funds to this account, while Mrs. Carol Other has not contributed anything over the years, despite having a part-time job. One document indicated that Mr. Other was asked to give up his claim to his daughter because Mr. Stephen Morrison wants to adopt her, with the support of both Ms. Carol Other and Ms. Mackenzie Other. Since Ms. Mackenzie is not yet in university and does not want to keep Mr. Other's name, I see no reason for Mr. Other to pay for someone who does not wish to have a relationship with him. Those funds will stay with Mr. Other completely. He could choose to help Ms. Other with her education after today's decision, but that would be entirely up to him. I felt confused. I'd been putting money into Mackenzie's account since she was born. Learning that I didn't need to give anything to Carol or Mackenzie was surprising. The judge continued. The request for Mr. John Other to pay spousal support and child support from the time of separation until Mrs. Carol Other marries Dr. Stephen Morrison is denied. The court sees that Mr. Other was not given fair chances to respond to Mrs. Other and Ms. Other. It is also noted that Mrs. Other and Ms. Other have been living with Dr. Morrison since the day they separated. This is clear from the letter Mrs. Other left for Mr. Other on that day, along with the petitions showing that they plan to marry soon after this ruling. The court also notes that Ms. Other's adoption will happen right after the wedding. Therefore, there is no reason to approve the support request. As for the house owned by Mr. and Mrs. Other, I grant full use of the home to Mr. Other with no financial penalties. As mentioned earlier, both Mrs. Other and Ms. Other already have a new place to live that costs them nothing. If Mr. Other decides to sell the house, he will need to give 40% of the profits, after taxes, to Mrs. Other. No one spoke. I don't think anyone expected this result. The divorce of Mr. John Other from Mrs. Carol Other is granted. This court is now closed. We were led out of the courtroom as the next case began. Kim was thrilled in the hallway. Rarely did a divorce go in favor of the man, especially when custody was involved. But Carol had hurt herself by leaving that letter and asking me to allow Stephen to adopt Mackenzie. As we left the courtroom, we walked by Carol and Stephen with their lawyers. They stopped talking and looked at us. Kim held my hand and walked confidently past them, a big, satisfied smile on her face. Stephen stared at me angrily. Carol looked upset and then furious as we got close. I smiled at them and kept walking. I heard her whisper, "You jerk," but Kim guided me along before I could reply. Later that evening, I received a call from my parents. My mom was a bit unwell, but pleased about the ruling, although she felt sad that she wouldn't get to see her granddaughter anymore. My dad was practical, but also disappointed. Paul joined Kim and me for burgers and a couple of beers. It wasn't a real celebration. No one wins in a divorce. Still, I managed to get through it without too much financial trouble. The most surprising call came the next day from William and Martha. "Hey, Terry, how are you doing?" "All things considered, not too bad. However, I feel like my heart will never be the same again." Carol's betrayal was painful, but Mackenzie's choice leaves me confused. "We understand, son," William said. "We love our daughters more than anything. It's hard to see someone choose money and a difficult man over family." I had to agree. It was strange. I think this has a lot to do with her mother. I never expected this, but looking back, I see that I wasn't enough for Carol. She always wanted the newest things and spent money faster than I could earn it. I had to make do with an old truck for work while she drove a new car. At the time, I didn't understand, but now I see that she wanted more than what I could give. She taught her daughter the same idea. I felt sad about losing my daughter. I think they felt it too, so William changed the subject. "So, what are you planning to do now, Terry?" "Honestly, I'm not sure. I've been talking with Dad and I'm thinking about selling the house and moving away. Just to avoid running into any of them. I have my truck and tools so I can find work almost anywhere. I think having some distance could help." There was a moment of silence. "Terry?" "Yes, Martha?" "Well, William and I have been discussing something." My curiosity rose. Since I met this couple, they had treated me like family. They'd checked in on me, almost as if I were one of their kids. "What are you wondering about?" I heard some quiet whispers, then William cleared his throat. Terry, we were wondering if you would be open to working for us." "You mean at Deloitte's Inc.?" "Yes. One of our managers is retiring after over 40 years, and we're struggling to find someone with the right skills. Since you are a plumber, you know the product and how it's used, so you could be a great fit. Martha has been encouraging me to talk to you. But I wanted to wait until your divorce was finalized. If you're thinking of moving, would you consider working with us?" I was surprised. They were offering me a position that sounded significant. "Terry, are you still there?" Martha asked. Yes, sorry, I was just caught off guard. I'm definitely interested. This could be the change I need." We spent the next hour discussing the details. They explained what they were looking for. While it was a bit different from my past experience, I felt confident in my skills as a plumber. They needed help overseeing the quality of their manufacturing process. Deloitte's makes a variety of plumbing products that are sold in Australia and abroad. They have 3 locations and a few trucks for their deliveries. The secret to their success was the quality of what they offered. So when they offered me a job to manage quality, it was a big deal for both of us. They shared that my starting salary would be nearly double what I currently earned as a sole trader, and with bonuses based on performance, it could be even more if I worked hard. I agreed to the job, but I wanted Kim to review the contract before I officially accepted. They were fine with that and appreciated that I was being careful. When I showed the offer to Kim, she was excited for me. It would allow me to move away from Carol and Mackenzie. Plus, she knew William and Martha from the hospital, so she realized that my new bosses were good people. The next day, I accepted the offer and started getting ready to move. Instead of selling my house, I decided to rent it out. This way, I could earn some money from it without giving anything to Carol. Within 2 weeks, I found someone ready to move in within about 6 weeks. I also found a small rental close to the Delatees offices, a 2-bedroom unit with parking and storage for my truck and tools. The rental agency appreciated that I was willing to commit to a 12-month lease. While getting ready for the move, I learned that Stephen and Carol had gotten married. That meant Stephen had adopted my daughter, who was now named Mackenzie Morrison. I was no longer her father. I thought this news would hit me harder, but surprisingly, it didn't. Though I felt a bit sad, it was just a part of life. I was moving forward. The night before I left, my parents, Kim and Paul, came over. We enjoyed some amazing Thai food from a place Paul had discovered by chance. Sadly, it would be one of the last times I saw my mom outside a hospital. We didn't know it then, but she had cancer. And while they were performing tests, my parents hadn't received the diagnosis yet. So now it's all done. You haven't heard anything from Carol or Mackenzie? My mom asked. No, Mom. I honestly didn't expect to, I replied. I heard they had a big wedding. Mackenzie was in the bridal party and seemed really happy about her new dad. Yes, but I heard there are already problems. My sister chimed in with a light in her eyes. Really? I asked, curious. She nodded. Yes. After that evening at the hospital, Dr. Stephen Moran has been put on probation. Apparently they lost a big donor who switched to another hospital, which raised some eyebrows. And I heard that a lawyer had good evidence and witnesses about an incident where he acted unprofessionally with a patient. We all laughed. A lawyer? Well, I hear she's very smart and attractive, she said with a smile, but I'll be keeping an eye on Dr. Moran. I informed the hospital that if more complaints came up, we would be seeking compensation. Their answer was to place him on probation, and he wouldn't receive any bonuses for the next 2 years. So I think between that and the lack of funds from your university account, things are not as bright as they should be for the newlyweds and his daughter. The next day, the movers came and took the remaining furniture, putting it in storage. I could send it to myself later if I needed it. After that, a cleaning crew arrived to tidy up the house, getting it ready for the new tenants. I was securing my tools in my truck, preparing to drive to my new apartment, when I heard an unexpected voice. Where are you going? Dad? I turned around to see my daughter, Mackenzie, standing there. Further down the street, Carol was sitting in her new car, watching. Away, I replied in a flat tone. But Dad, why are you leaving? Now that everything is settled, you can see me again. I would really like to see you. You can spoil me again and give me the birthday present I know you got for me. I grunted and didn't respond as I checked the tie-down behind my driver's seat. Inside, I felt torn between wanting to hug my little girl and feeling angry about how she had hurt me. Mackenzie watched me for a moment. Then her voice turned sweet, the kind daughters use to win over their dads. Daddy, don't you want to see me? My answer came quickly. No, not really. I don't want to see you. I turned back to her, letting some of my frustration from the past months show. Mackenzie, you're 15 now, and you need to start understanding how the adult world works. After what you and your mother did to me right now, your adult life starts here. I tried to stay calm, not wanting to lose my temper. So no, I don't want to see you, spoil you, or give you anything. But Daddy, I'm still your little girl. You're still my father. I felt like I might explode. Instead, I hit the side of my truck, the metal making a loud noise. Mackenzie jumped back. I kept my fist against the side of the truck, looking at the ground as I spoke to the girl who once meant everything to me. No, I am not your father anymore. You and your mother asked me to give up that role when I came home that day to find you gone. I received no goodbye, and there was no contact for over 6 months while both of you got a restraining order against me." A single tear rolled down my cheek. I straightened up and looked at Mackenzie. "What did I do to deserve this treatment? Can you tell me? Can you, Mackenzie?" I felt bad for talking to her this way, but the pain I had held for 6 months was finally coming out. Carol got out of the car and walked towards us. She could hear what I was saying, so I continued. "I came home that day, and your mother hurt me deeply. I loved her and did everything I could for her. When she needed to go out, I was there to take care of you. When she wanted dinner made or the house cleaned, I helped. When you both were sick, I was there for you. If she needed clothes or shoes, I made sure she had money for those things, but it was never enough." Carol stood quietly behind Mackenzie. I looked at her, feeling my love for my ex-wife fade into anger. She took what I gave her, pretending to love me back, all while having a relationship with someone else, which I didn't even notice for nearly 2 years. I didn't see it because I loved her, but that wasn't the worst part. "Do you want to know what was, Mackenzie?" She stared at me, wide-eyed. "It was you. My own daughter," I said, my heart aching even more. "You, my own blood, turned against me. Your mother hurt me, but you ignored my pain. When your new father told you I was in the hospital, did either of you think to check on me? No. On my birthday, there was no message, no wish. Yet on your birthday, Mackenzie, you told me to call and hear about your present. I felt lost. And to add to my suffering, you both put a distance between us when you left. You even asked me to give up my role as your father. I was hurt by those I cared about most. So no, Mackenzie. There will be no gifts for your birthday, no holiday cheer, and if you need anything, don't come to me. After what happened, I feel like you both have taken everything from me. I no longer see you as my daughter because of how you both have acted. If you want something, ask your new father, because from that day on, it feels like you both are gone from my life. It hurts less to think of it that way. I will carry this pain with me forever." By the end of my heartfelt words, tears streamed down my face. The first real tears I had shed in months. Unable to handle it, Mackenzie turned and ran back to the car, breaking my heart again. Carol tried to reach her, but she ran past her. With the car door slamming shut, Carol turned back to me, her anger boiling. "How could you do that, Terry? She wanted to make things right. You're being really cruel. You know that. She isn't my daughter anymore, and I'm only this way because of how you acted. But it's not my problem anymore, is it? You made sure of that." She glared at me. "So that's it? You just give up and run away like a weak man? Stephen was right about you." "No, Carol. Like I told you, you and your daughter broke me. You took all the love I had for both of you and crushed it. All that paperwork and those adoption papers took months to prepare, and you both had to know about it. Your daughter knew you were going to betray me. She knew. The morning you left, you both acted like nothing would change. And really, Carol, the night before, you never hinted that you were about to leave." Carol looked down, recalling our last time together. "But seriously, it's cold-hearted to act like everything was fine and then just walk away." I kept going. And just to be clear, I didn't give up. You gave up on me. You broke our marriage vows and chose to be with another man. You're the one who ran away and did everything to make sure I couldn't follow. You turned Mackenzie into someone just like you. You could have let my daughter be my daughter, but no, you had to control everything. So tell me, Carol, did you ever love me?" For a moment, she looked soft and seemed ready to apologize. But then her expression hardened. "Forget you, Terry. My daughter and I will be fine without you. Stephen is better than you, and we don't need your money." I laughed. "Yes, he may be better, but you should be careful. He's not exactly in shape. It can't be easy for him. And before you met him, I don't remember you complaining about me being a plumber." "Terry," I raised my hand to stop her. "Carol, it's too late. You and Mackenzie made your choices. I'm no longer part of that. I've given you the money the court required. And now that I'm out of the picture. Choosing to walk away. But that money was for Mackenzie, not yours. You should give it to her. And here we go again. It's always about money. Plus, you never even said you were sorry for how you treated me, how you left, and how you turned my daughter against me, putting that restraining order in place." Carol was staring at the ground now, a look of shame on her face. "It's clear you came here for one thing, money. So it's not just a refusal to give you anything from that account, it's a strong no. Neither you nor she will be getting any of that money. When you both chose to adopt her, you took that money away as an option for her. You and her new father can find the money if she goes to university. You keep saying how great he is. Since Mackenzie is no longer my daughter, I will save that money for a day when I may have a child who will love me and give it to them." Carol looked very angry. I glanced at Mackenzie sitting in the passenger seat and crying. I wasn't sure if she was upset because of what I said or because she felt she lost me. I would likely never know. I held up my hand again before Carol could say anything more. "Carol, whatever you want to say isn't going to help. We're finished. Know that I once loved Mackenzie and you with all I had and would have done anything for either of you, but that love is gone now, and you won't like what's taken its place if you keep pushing. So go back to your new life and do what you want. I am doing what I want with mine." With that, I turned back to secure my tools in the truck. She stood there for a few minutes staring at me. Then she turned and left. I caught a glimpse of her in the car for a moment as she and Mackenzie talked. It seemed like when Mackenzie tried to get out, Carol stopped her. I didn't look directly at them. I just kept organizing my truck. Then, as I finished my checks, I noticed the car was gone. I spent a few more minutes, ensuring everything was in place. The house was tidy. I climbed into my truck and drove off. I wasn't sure what was next for me, but I planned to be ready. Little did I know that life had unexpected challenges waiting for me. Loaded with my tools and everything important to me, I eased my truck onto the highway. I kept changing radio stations, searching for something that matched my mood. Each station played songs that felt like reminders of my past 6 months. There were songs about loss and betrayal, rock songs that expressed pain, and classical music that was sad. Pop songs spoke of unfaithfulness, while country songs told stories of heartbreak. Each station reflected my troubles, but not my future. Finally, I switched to Spotify on my phone, connected it to my truck, and listened to some relaxing instrumental music that let me unwind during the drive. Why was I on the road? Well, a little over 6 months ago, my wife of 15 years left me for another man, a self-absorbed doctor. I recently discovered that my former wife was being influenced by a self-important doctor who seemed full of himself. To make things worse, my daughter, Mackenzie, sided with her mother and turned away from me as well. It seemed she had been working with her mother for over a year to have this doctor adopt her, making me less important in her life. After everything was settled, both women showed up at my door the day I was leaving town. My daughter, now adopted by Dr. Stephen Morrison, asked me for gifts and favors. I must admit, I reacted harshly and told them they were no longer part of my life. Neither of them knew where I was going or what I was doing, but I guess they thought it was just another plumbing job, which is what I was trained to do. They seemed to think being a plumber was not as good as being a doctor, So, after the divorce and the messy adoption, I was driving 6 hours away from Maitland to Bathurst to join Delatees Inc. as their new quality manager. I had met the owners, William and Martha, the night my family left me with just a note. During my divorce, they kept in touch, and once it was over, they offered me the lead quality manager position for their plumbing products. It was an important opportunity for me, which is why I was heading south, trying to find music that wouldn't make me sad about losing my family. A couple of years earlier, I had bought a second-hand Ford F-Truck and customized it for my work. I added toolboxes and a new bull bar with powerful lights and a winch for when I got stuck on a job site. I also put in extra lights for working at night, which helped me work almost anywhere at any time. The few times my family and I went camping, my truck's upgrades were really useful. With its off-road capability, I was glad I had a vehicle that could handle tough conditions. Sure, it used more fuel than a typical truck in Australia, but I thought it was worth it. As I drove for the first couple of hours, I reflected on the past few years. Looking back, I could see how both women had slowly pulled away from me. It wasn't obvious at first, but Carol's affectionate kisses became just little pecks. And my outings with Mackenzie turned from fun dad-daughter days into her asking what I could do for her. I had loved them both deeply and never saw the change coming. My sister Kim told me that I loved them so much that I overlooked their faults. I never thought I would be hurt by those I cared for deeply. I might still be unaware of it all if Carol had not started seeing Dr. Dickhead, who convinced her to leave me. I hated him for taking my family away. But thinking about it now, if it hadn't been him, it would have been someone else. Carol simply wanted something different and to move on from me. One day I stopped at a highway service center to fill up my gas tank. I went inside to pay and picked up some drinks and snacks. While I was there, I saw a weather report on a TV on the wall. Big storms were coming later today, which felt just right. The weather seemed to match my mood. After filling up the tank and checking my gear, I got back on the road and drove at a steady speed. I hoped to reach my new 2-bedroom apartment by early evening. I had just over a week before starting my job at Delatees Inc., so I had time to explore the area. Since I was outside Bathurst in Australia, I wanted to see the famous racetrack. Growing up, I had watched the race with my dad, and driving around the track was a dream for me. I was also excited to try the local cafes and bars. As someone who works with my hands, coffee and evening drinks were important to me, so finding the right places would help me meet new people. As I drove, I began to feel sad while thinking about my recent life. I still couldn't understand why Carol and Mackenzie treated me the way they did. They even put a restraining order on me, which kept me from seeing them or Dr. Dickhead during the divorce process, all while asking me to let Mackenzie be adopted and change her name. Kim, my older sister and my lawyer, convinced me to sign the papers, telling me it was what both the women had planned all along. The sky turned dark, matching my feelings. Clouds gathered as I drove, making me feel like the upcoming storm knew about my pain and was moving with me. I almost wished for the storm to pass over their house and bring lightning down on it. As the rain started, my feelings of sadness grew. I believe my car windows were up, but my shirt felt wet, reminding me of my lost family. With the rain pouring outside, I felt a wave of sadness inside me as I drove. The storm really picked up, and the rain fell heavily. It became so difficult to see that I had to slow down to stay safe. Lightning flashed in the sky, and thunder rolled around me. I drove through this storm for almost 2 hours, sometimes more gently, and at other times, it was so fierce that visibility was nearly zero. Through it all, I quietly cried. Every mile I traveled reminded me of my pain and the love I had felt, making each tear a memory. I spotted a rest area and decided to stop. Driving in such a storm was draining. On top of that, I was sorting through my feelings, which left me quite exhausted. I filled up my gas tank again and parked, eventually drifting off to the sound of rain hitting my windows. I woke up about 30 minutes later and noticed I felt much better. It seemed the worst of the storm had moved on. Although it was still raining, it was lighter now, and the booming thunder had mostly faded. Taking it as a good sign, I switched to a local country radio station, started my truck, and got back on the road. I drove for about an hour before the radio interrupted with a news announcement. Attention, everyone. We apologize for this interruption, but the Weather Service has announced a superstorm developing right behind the storm we just experienced in the Sydney area. Residents from Newcastle to Orange are advised to find shelter due to possible strong winds, hail, and heavy rain. They provided more details for the next 10 minutes, explaining that several weather systems had combined and were using moisture from the earlier storm to create a much larger storm. I knew I would likely be caught in it, but there were no stops between where I was and Bathurst. I worried that hail could damage my truck, but if that happened, I could seek shelter under one of the highway overpasses. With a sturdy truck, I figured I could handle the rain well enough, so I kept driving. The rain returned, and I focused intently on the road. The rain pounded against my truck again, but after hours of crying, I felt more in control. I kept my attention on my driving. At one point, the rain was so intense that I almost missed my exit. I was off the highway and onto the road that would take me to my new home on the outskirts of Bathurst, near Delotes Inc. It was a good road, but unlike the highway, it had no street lights and the sides weren't wide, so I had to be careful. I had been driving for about 20 minutes on that road, expecting another hour at this slow speed before I arrived. Then I saw something out of the corner of my eye. It was pouring rain. The raindrops hit my windshield like a drum. Still, I kept my focus ahead, glancing sideways when needed. During one of these glances, I noticed the hazard lights of a vehicle ahead. But something was off. The lights weren't parked safely on the side. Instead, they were turned oddly and seemed off the road. I slowed down as I got closer and stopped next to the vehicle, which was clearly in trouble. It was a late-model Land Rover Sport, a four-wheel drive that could go off-road with the right skills. Unfortunately, it had slid off the road into a drainage ditch. To make things worse, although the hazard lights were on, the front of the vehicle was submerged in rising water. I wasn't sure if anyone was inside, so I parked safely and turned on my own hazard lights, hoping to warn other drivers in this storm. I put on a raincoat and grabbed my flashlight before stepping out of the truck. As soon as I was outside, I knew I would get wet from the storm. I made my way to the Land Rover and noticed it was stuck in the ditch, pressed against a large fallen tree. Using my flashlight, I could see that the car had slid off the road and been pushed down the ditch by the rushing water with the tree stopping its movement. Since we drive on the left side of the road in Australia, the driver's door would be on the right. I saw that the tree pinned the passenger side doors, and with the force of the water, the driver's door likely wouldn't open easily. I carefully stepped down the muddy bank and into the water, shining my flashlight through the fogged-up windows to check if there was anyone inside. I quickly heard someone calling for help, so I stepped deeper into the water. "Help!" I heard a woman's voice. I knocked on the window with my knuckles and shouted, "Window!" It was tough to talk over the loud storm, but I could hear her reply. "The car is stuck!" There was panic in her voice. It must have been very stressful to be in that situation, yet she was holding it together. The car's lights were still on, so I knew it had some power, but the window must have been stuck. I thought for a moment. There was no way I could open the door against the rushing water or the tree blocking it, and breaking the window could make things worse. However, I had a big truck with a winch that could help pull them out, at least enough to open the doors. Time was short, though, as the water was rising. I knocked on the window again, and just then the rain lightened a bit. "I'm going to get my winch to pull you out. Stay put." "Okay," I heard her reply. and I saw another person in the passenger seat. Two people needed my help. I needed to act fast. I hurried back to my truck, climbed in, and moved it to line up the winch with their car. My winch had a remote control, which made it easier. Once I was set, I got out and started unwinding the cable to connect it to the back of their car. It took me about 10 minutes, and during that time, the rain kept coming and going. The water, which was just below my ankles at the start, was now up to my knees. I realized that while their car was good, the spots where I could hook the winch were hard to reach quickly. I managed to thread the winch cable through a recovery point, though it took time to secure it properly. I stepped back to begin pulling them out. At first, the winch moved slowly as it tightened the cable between my truck and their car. But after a few minutes, I could see the car slowly rising out of the water. I wasn't too worried about the weight pulling my truck into the ditch. My truck was much heavier with all my tools in it, so I kept winding the winch. It took about 10 minutes to pull their car out enough so the doors could open. As soon as I felt it was far enough out of the water, I stopped winding. Just then, the driver's side door started to open. There was a strong force of water pushing against the car door, so I had to help the driver open it. Once we managed to get it open, my life changed forever. I reached out my hand to her as the rain continued to pour. I helped her out of the car. Her face was striking with pale skin and a few freckles, framed by beautiful red hair. She wore a dark green skirt that hugged her shape. The way she walked made it hard not to look at her. The white blouse she wore became see-through in the rain, revealing a white lace bra beneath it. I quickly turned my gaze away to avoid staring. She blushed a bit, knowing she couldn't do much about her situation in the rain. I made sure to keep my eyes on hers, respecting her as she stood there. Her green eyes were captivating, and I felt like I could look into them forever, forgetting that we were in a fierce storm, where she might have been in danger just moments before. Just like that, the moment passed. I helped her to her feet, ensuring she wouldn't stumble into the water. Then I turned to help the passenger out of the car and did a double take. If the driver was stunning. The next person took my breath away as she climbed over the center console to exit. She looked just like her sister. They had to be twins. They shared the same curves, hair, eyes, and freckles. This second sister wore a navy blue skirt and a white top, and she had to lift her skirt to get out. I helped her out as well, and the three of us waded through the water to the dry bank of the ditch. Luckily, the rain had eased up, so we didn't need to shout. "Are you both okay?" I asked them. They nodded in response. "Yes, thank you," said the twin in the green skirt. "I don't know what we would have done without your help," said the twin in the blue skirt. I glanced at the winch cable. It was tight, and while the water was still pushing against the car, the tree had it stuck in place. I might be able to pull the car out, but it would take some work. If the car wasn't working electronically, I wasn't sure what else could be done. "Is there someone I can call to help you?" "Right now, the most important thing is that you're safe. I'm Terry, by the way." The twin in the green skirt looked at her car with a frown, while the twin in the blue dress turned to me and said, "I'm Harmony, and this is my sister Melody. Thank you, Terry." "Yes, thank you, Terry," Melody added. We got swept off the road, and as the water pushed us backward, I couldn't open my door. When we got stuck against a tree, I tried to get out, but the water was too strong. Once we fell into the ditch, the car's electricity stopped working, so we were trapped. Harmony was figuring out how to break a window when we saw your flashlight. You can't imagine how much you have helped us. If it weren't for the storm, I might have felt embarrassed. I wasn't a hero. I just saw people who needed help. Melody continued. As for getting help, there is no one we can call. This road has a weak phone signal at the best times, and right now it's probably not working at all. If it's okay, can we ride with you? We were headed to our parents' house, which is about 15 minutes down the road when this happened. Sure, that's fine. I was about to say more when I suddenly shouted, "Harmony, no!" My thoughts jumped mid-sentence. You learn quickly that when using any towing device, you shouldn't stand in line with the cable under tension. If the cable snaps, it can release a lot of force very quickly, which can be dangerous. Harmony had stepped behind the car to look at the cable, unaware of the risk she was in. With the water pushing against the car, the tension on the cable was strong. Debris floating by only added to the danger. Just then, as I warned Harmony, Melody turned to look at her sister. A loud crash echoed as a large piece of debris struck the car's front. It felt like time slowed down as I noticed the winch cable strain from the sudden movement of the vehicle. A huge force pushed the cable in an unexpected way. I realized my hold wouldn't last much longer, so I dashed through the mud and water to pull Harmony away from where the cable might snap. We all heard the terrible sound of metal giving way just after the impact as I moved with everything I had. I jumped the last few feet, grabbing Harmony to pull her out of the way of a snapping cable. Unfortunately, it wasn't the best choice. Thankfully, the cable didn't break off completely. Instead, one of the shackles on the chain couldn't handle the pressure and snapped. This caused the cable to swing back toward my truck. The chain broke, and the cable came back at us, bouncing off my truck and heading straight for Harmony and me. Just like the last time I tried to save someone, I rolled as I grabbed Harmony. I wanted to protect her, holding her close as we dove away from the incoming cable. Everything felt like it was happening in slow motion. In that moment, I held Harmony tightly, looking into her green eyes. I could see her fear and confusion about why a stranger was holding her. She looked surprised and then worried when she saw the pain on my face. Luckily, it was just the chain that hit me. The cable was moving slowly enough that it didn't hurt me too badly. Still, it hit my side pretty hard, leaving a bruise, and it scraped down my arm, creating a painful cut. Then we landed on the ground, and time seemed to speed up again. I groaned, unsure of what I was saying because the pain in my side was growing. Just then Melody came rushing over. "Terry!" she yelled. I groaned again, and Harmony managed to wriggle free from my grasp. She looked at my side and gasped. "Is he gonna be okay?" a worried Melody asked her sister. I felt lost, pain coursing through me despite the rain. I could hear Harmony trying to talk to me, and somehow I instinctively recognized her. "Terry, thank you, you saved me," she said, leaning down and giving me a quick kiss on the cheek. "You're going to be okay. You're going into shock, so just so you know, I'm a nurse, and we're going to take care of you." I tried to focus. Harmony asked, "Terry, do you have a first aid kit in your truck? Where is it?" "It's in the driver's side front toolbox with a green first aid sticker," I managed to say. She nodded and turned to Melody. "Mel, go get the kit since I know what I need. You should keep him on his side and try to hold the wound together." Melody nodded. "He'll do my best. Please hurry back. He really needs you." I felt movement and more pain, like fire running down my arm, but I tried to stay still with my eyes closed. Harmony went to my truck, and if I could see, I would have witnessed Melody tearing her shirt into strips in the pouring rain to help bind the wound on my arm. A moment later, I felt her gentle kiss on my lips, which made me open my eyes. She whispered words that I treasure. "I hope you know that I don't do this for just anyone, only for those who saved my sister and me." In the following minutes, she used the pieces of her shirt to create a bandage that kept my wound from opening more. Thankfully, Harmony returned looking worried. "I tripped and the first aid kit got muddy." When she saw what Melody had done, she relaxed. Great thinking, Melody. She looked at me. I was slipping into shock from blood loss, but felt a moment of clarity. Let's get Terry up to his truck. He'll check the bandage and we can decide what to do next. After a few minutes, Melody helped support my right side, and Harmony carefully lifted me from the left, trying not to disturb my wound too much. It took some time, but they got me under the headlights of my truck. I was feeling lightheaded, but managed to stand with their help. We need more bandages. He's still bleeding too much, Harmony said as she checked my wound. Then, without hesitation, she took off part of her shirt and started tearing it into strips to make more bandages. As a nurse, she worked efficiently, and soon, my wound was secured with pieces from both their shirts. Though I was in pain, the bleeding had slowed. I regretted that I couldn't appreciate the moment more with two caring women helping me, but I was starting to feel weak. How are we going to get out of here? Harmony asked. What if no one comes to help us? I can drive. I'll get us out, I replied. No, both girls said together. He'll drive. This can't be harder than the trucks at the factory, Melody said, looking at my truck. If I wasn't feeling so tired, I might have disagreed. But it turned out I didn't need to worry. Melody, even though she was only wearing a green skirt and a white top, also had a license to drive big vehicles. Who would have thought? After a few minutes, the girls helped me into the driver's seat while they adjusted the back seat so that Harmony and I could sit there as Melody took the wheel. Melody seemed right at home in my truck. She managed to fix the broken winch and turned off the custom spotlights. I remember her easily steering the truck back onto the road and starting our journey, heading to somewhere I didn't know. But she seemed to have a plan. The last thing I recall is feeling a soft touch on my lips. It felt so familiar, yet different. I opened my eyes and saw beautiful green eyes looking back at mine. It's okay, Terry, we've got you. Thank you. You saved us both. After that, everything became blurry, and I must have passed out. Sometime later, I woke slowly. I heard the gentle beeping of hospital machines typical for waking up after something big happened. But this didn't feel like a hospital bed. It was too cozy. I opened my eyes with some effort and noticed a high ceiling with great decorations. The curtains were drawn, but I could see it was daytime outside, probably late morning. My left side was hurting. I could feel an injury there and was careful not to move. I also felt a small medical tube from a drip on my right side and the touch of medical pads on my chest. I tried to shift a bit, but found it hard. The reason was that Melody was lying across my waist. Her hair was spread out, and her arm was resting on me in a way that showed comfort and care. When I turned my head to the left, I saw Harmony. She was gently holding my hand and seemed to be dozing until I moved. As I looked at her, her deep green eyes met mine, and a smile appeared on her face, brightened by her eyes. "Hi," she simply said. "Hi," I managed to reply, trying to smile back. "Is he awake?" Melody asked as she lifted herself off me to check. "Yeah, our hero is back." Harmony smiled and squeezed my hand. There are definitely worse things than waking up after a big accident with two lovely sisters by your side. Melody looked up at me and gave me the same bright smile that Harmony had just shown. Harmony had switched to nurse mode, checking me over after a few minutes. She took my pulse, looked into my eyes with a small light, and listened to my heartbeat with a stethoscope. "Wait, I thought only doctors used those?" I joked. She laughed softly and said, "Looks like our patient isn't just a hero. He's got a sense of humor, too." It wasn't that funny, but she got that I was trying. She handed me the stethoscope. "I borrowed this from a friend. He'll stop by later to check on you. For now, I know what to do after what you've been through." She picked up the phone beside the bed and waited a moment. "Hez awake." Then she put the phone down. "Days?" I asked, with my eyes confused. Harmony nodded. "You've been asleep for almost 4 days, Terry." The girls must have noticed how worried I was. 4 days? Oh no. I need to call my new boss and let him know. I was supposed to tell him 3 days ago I arrived. I didn't want to start off on the wrong foot with William and Martha by not letting them know what was going on. "It's okay, Terry," Melody said with a grin, not looking worried at all. Instead, she looked like she knew something I didn't. "We've taken care of it. Your new employers know where you are and what happened, and they've also informed your sister. So everything is under control." The worry left me, and I felt myself relax. "Are they okay? William and Martha have really helped me a lot these past few months. I would hate to let them down." I didn't notice until then that another voice joined us. "We couldn't be prouder of you, Terry. You're one of the most amazing people we know," a familiar female voice said. Standing in the doorway was Martha with William close behind her. As they entered, Harmony moved aside but still held my hand. Martha sat down next to her. For a moment I was surprised at how much Martha resembled the girls. While Melody and Harmony were slightly curvier, they all had the same hair color, though Martha's was straight. But the eyes were the same Martha's, and the girls had that same spark. Martha leaned over and placed a hand on me. William smiled warmly. "Terry, you saved our girls," William said, his voice full of heartfelt gratitude. I looked at Melody, then Harmony, and finally back to Martha and William. They were all smiling at me, and everything started to make sense. "These are your daughters?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. My mind was a bit foggy right now. "Of course we are, silly," Melody laughed. "How many beautiful red-headed twins do you know with amazing parents who hire such charming quality managers?" She said it like it was obvious. We laughed together, but I felt a little tense in my neck. The pain medicine must be strong, but my arm didn't hurt much at all. Harmony was right beside me. "It's okay, Terry. For now, just lie still and relax. In a couple of hours after Dr. Hill sees you, we can help you get up." I managed a slight nod. "I guess I should ask what happened and where we are. This doesn't feel like a hospital." Melody chimed in. "We're at Mom and Dad's house. You probably don't remember much since you pretty much fell asleep once we started driving. When we got a little further, your phone got service, so we pulled over to call Mom and Dad from your truck." She looked a bit sheepish. "Sorry for using your phone without asking, but ours got lost in the car." "It's fine, Melody. You did the right thing." "What happened next?" She brightened up as if I had just complimented her, but Harmony jumped in to tell the rest. "Melody got Dad on the phone and explained that we had an accident, and that a man who was hurt had helped us. We wanted to take you to the hospital, but one of the main bridges into town was flooded, and it would take hours to get there. So Dad told us to bring you here." William added, "I was really worried when they called me. There was so much emotion, and they kept saying how Terry saved them and was hurt. I didn't realize they meant you until they pulled up in your truck and asked for my help." Melody giggled. "Dad almost put you back in the truck when we got out, but then he saw it was you on the floor and his whole attitude changed." I smiled. "William, once that cable hit me, I had no idea what was happening, so rest assured, your girls are safe." William gave me a serious dad look for a moment, then laughed. Harmony leaned in and kissed my cheek. A moment later, she whispered in my ear, "If it's about keeping honor, we'll have to find a way to thank you later." I felt myself blush, and I could tell William, Martha, and even Harmony were clued in, judging by their laughter. Once the laughter died down, Melody continued. "We brought you up here. Harmony patched your wound while we waited for Dr. Hill. The Hills are friends who live just a few houses away, so he got here quickly. I looked at William and Martha. Dr. Hill, is he related to Marge? Yes. Simon is her husband. After we met that evening, I convinced them to move here to Bathurst, and we've all been good friends since, William explained. Martha added, We were a bit worried. You had lost a lot of blood and had a fever after you helped our girls, but Simon was able to stitch you up and got some blood thanks to your donor card in your wallet. We have just been waiting for you to wake up. We all sat quietly for a few minutes, thinking about the story from different perspectives. I realized I wasn't the only one who had done something brave. Melody, Harmony, I know you think I saved you, but I need you to know that both of you are my heroes too. You saved my life. Harmony, if you hadn't been there to help either Melody or me, I might not be here. The girls started to tear up, but smiled widely. I could see that William was happy with my words about his daughters. But strangely, even though I had been asleep for almost 4 days, I started to feel tired again. Harmony noticed. All right, everyone, I think Terry needs more rest. He is out of danger, so let's let him sleep for a few more hours before Simon arrives. She turned to me. Terry, you should get some sleep. Once Simon checks you out, we'll help you clean up and get moving. I noticed the way she said, clean up, and could see a kind of warmth in her eyes. After not having much contact with anyone for 6 months, even a simple gesture stirred something in me despite my condition. A few moments later, I fell asleep, feeling a peace I hadn't felt in a long time. In my dreams, I thought of Melody as I helped her out of the car. Then I thought of Harmony and how she held on to me during those moments before I lost consciousness. Yes, the twins were both very lovely, and I could see how I might develop feelings for either one. I slept soundly for a few hours until Dr. Simon Hill arrived. It seemed that resting in bed had worked wonders for my arm. I had a dozen stitches, but Simon said it was healing well. Besides my arm, my back had some bruises, and when Simon examined it, the pain became sharper as the medicine wore off. After a thorough checkup, he said I was healthy enough to get up. I was relieved because I really needed to get out of bed after being there for days. Simon went to talk with William and Martha while Melody closed my bedroom door. When I tried to stand up, Melody and Harmony were quick to help me. They kept me steady on my feet. I was wearing just my boxer briefs, and having 2 beautiful women supporting me was a bit overwhelming. I can manage from here, girls, I said, feeling this was something I wanted to do alone. They giggled. We're not so sure, Terry. You still look pretty weak, Melody said, smiling. I think you need some help. Before I realized it, Melody lifted the toilet seat while Harmony assisted me with my pants. They helped me sit down, but neither of them moved to leave the bathroom. Melody went to turn on the shower after they helped me settle. After a few moments, I heard the sound of water running. As I looked up, I noticed Melody wearing only a black thong and matching bra. Harmony then nudged closer to me, reassuring me with her gentle words. Don't worry, Terry. We've got you. And we're not letting go, she said softly. It took some time, but I was finally able to take care of myself. While I did, Melody had warmed up the shower and she was dressed in a simple, black outfit. Harmony stood up and began to take off her clothes as well, revealing her navy blue briefs. After a moment, both of them shared a look and then turned, showing me a playful side. They giggled together as they continued to prepare for the shower. Come on, hero. Let's get you cleaned up, Melody laughed, noticing my surprised reaction. Harmony then helped me cover my arm with a plastic sleeve to keep it dry. With that, all 3 of us stepped into the spacious shower together. The three of us crowded in the small space, but all I had to do was stand there as the girls carefully helped me clean up with warm washcloths and soap. It was quiet, almost peaceful, as they gently washed away the grime and carefully avoided my bruises. Harmony, especially, took extra care with the large bruise on my back, making sure not to cause me any more pain. After they'd finished, Melody and Harmony each gave me a warm, comforting hug. Their kindness helped me relax, especially after all the stress and strain I'd been through. Once they made sure I was steady, they helped me out of the shower, dried me off, and guided me back to bed, where I soon drifted into a deep, restful sleep. I woke up a few hours later feeling much more rested. To my surprise, I was alone in the room, but soon enough, Melody walked in to check on me. She knelt beside the bed and gave me a light kiss on the forehead. "You looked like you needed the sleep, so we let you rest while we helped Mom and Dad get things ready for dinner," she said with a gentle smile. As she moved across the room to pick out clothes for me, she looked back and added, "Now that you're awake, I'll help you get dressed, and we can eat." "Thanks, Melody," I said. Then, hesitating, I asked, Was that all real earlier?" She laughed softly as she laid out a shirt, jeans, and some clean socks. Coming back over, she sat beside me and placed a hand on my cheek, her eyes meeting mine with a warmth that took me by surprise. It felt like an unspoken bond passed between us, and for a moment, time seemed to slow. "No, Terry, it wasn't a dream," she said quietly. "Harmony and I have talked a lot, and we both feel a special connection with you. If you're willing, we'd like to be a part of your life." She looked at me with a slight blush, her gaze filled with hope. "Will you?" I felt my heart beat a little faster, and after a moment of thought, I smiled and nodded. "Yes, if you'll have me. But I think we should take things slow. I know there's something special between us, and I want to make sure we do it right." Melody nodded, her face lighting up with a smile that made everything feel that much simpler and right. "I feel like I could easily fall in love with both of you, but I'm still healing from my divorce and not fully able to take care of you both." She nodded and took a wise pose as she sat down on the bed. Harmony came into the room, catching the end of my chat with Melody. I sighed and went on. "Besides, how can I say no to two of the most wonderful women I've ever met who both want me? And it seems like there won't be any jealousy." They both smiled at me and shook their heads. "We just need some time, and there's also the issue of your parents." Both girls laughed. "Don't worry about Mom and Dad. I think Mom already knows we both really like you, and we can talk to them about it when the time is right. For now, you're right. Let's take it slow and help you get better." The girls helped me dress with very little touching. Harmony checked the bandage on my wound, and they both led me out to the kitchen. I learned I was in a guest room on the ground floor of William and Martha's big family home. William's grandfather had built it almost 80 years ago. It had 8 bedrooms, 10 bathrooms, a formal and casual lounge, 2 kitchens, and a 6-car garage. When I heard that William's grandfather built it, I asked for the story, and William smiled as he explained. "My family comes from a noble background in England. My great-grandfather was the Earl of Lancashire and had many children. While my grandfather inherited a lesser title, he was the last in his line to hold one. So he and my grandmother decided to move to Australia to make a new life. They arrived with a good inheritance, and my grandfather went into manufacturing. After a few years, he discovered that plumbing supplies were needed, and that became our family business. He bought the 500 acres where this house sits, started Delotes, Inc., and built a home and business that has been passed down through the years. I looked around the room with appreciation. It's amazing, William, and I really appreciate you taking me in and caring for me. Besides Paul, Kim, and my parents, it's been a while since someone has looked after me like this. Don't mention it. I just want to make sure my new quality manager gets back on his feet. He winked at me as Melody put another chicken enchilada on my plate. I had already eaten 3, along with 2 chicken legs and some pasta salad, while Harmony poured me more iced tea. Martha smiled at her daughters taking such good care of me. William, I don't think Terry is going to have any problems with the way these girls are looking after him. Girls, you need to give Terry some space. Aw, Mum, they replied almost together. We all laughed and enjoyed our meal. The next week was lovely for me. Simon came twice to check on how I was doing. With Harmony around, my cut was being taken care of and I was recovering quickly. The girls helped me bathe a few times, sometimes together and sometimes just one of them. We played a bit, but it never went beyond what happened the first time. We also had many conversations, discovering our shared likes and differences. It felt a bit strange to be getting closer to 2 similar girls at the same time. I wasn't sure what to do next. I didn't want to wear out my welcome, even with the girls' kindness. So when I said I needed to move into my apartment by the end of the week, the girls looked upset. It was William who stepped in. Terry, I hope you're not too disappointed, but I called the apartment complex and canceled your lease. Martha and I really want you to stay here for a while. You can use the guest room, and when you're ready, you can come to the office with me so you don't have to drive too soon. He looked at me and then at his daughters. Besides, I think my girls would be very upset if you leave. Melody went over to William, hugged him, and kissed the top of his head. You're the best dad. He looked back at me and said, Sorry if I overstepped, but after all you've done for my family, I want to help you until you are back on your feet. I was surprised they wanted to do this for me. Their home was lovely and I couldn't ask for better company. Even though our friendship had only started a couple of weeks ago, it felt like much longer. The girls were funny and smart. They knew how to laugh and could talk seriously or jokingly. Like many twins, they seemed to understand each other perfectly. As I healed, I sometimes felt sad thinking about Carol and Mackenzie. Melody and Harmony noticed and spent a lot of time talking with me. They asked questions and helped me sort through my feelings. Even though I was still angry at times, they never backed away when I had those feelings. This was so different from Carol, who would tell me to move on and leave the room when I was upset. The girls were always there, comforting me as I worked through my thoughts. And over the years, we made sure never to go to bed angry with each other. At the end of the second week, Simon visited again, removed my stitches, and praised Harmony for how well she had taken care of me. Melody sulked a bit until Harmony joined in, making sure Simon knew that Melody had also helped take care of me. I was on mild pain medication once a day and had to wear a sling on my arm for a month. My arm felt itchy and the scar was sore, but I was healing well. Harmony told me I would probably always have a small scar, but as she hugged me, she said she loved it because it reminded her of the night I helped them. My evenings were wonderful. I often fell asleep with one or both girls cuddled up next to me. Our hands sometimes brushed together and there was a certain closeness between us, but we never went too far. The following Monday was my first day at work. I was living with the boss and couldn't drive, so I rode with William and, surprise, Melody. Melody was the office manager at Delotes, Inc. She handled administration, logistics, finance, and human resources. William drove a new Ford truck similar to mine, bought last year. While he drove, Melody sat in the back with me, holding my hand and smiling as she talked about some of the people I would meet. My first week at the office felt a bit strange. Everyone seemed to know me already because of the story about how I had helped the girls. First, I met my team, which had 3 people in the quality department. They usually walked through the manufacturing floors to follow procedures, test parts, check their quality at random times, and report back. My job was to oversee the processes as we brought in new materials and then share the results with the management team and the board every quarter. Overall, everything seemed to be well organized. After a few days of looking over reports, I walked the floor with Sally, one of my team members, checking out the PVC pipe joiners we produced. I think if we made the join thicker by 3 millimeters, during this step of production, I said, pointing to a diagram, we could increase the join strength by about 5 times. I had one of the pipe joiners in my hand. There have been times when I've wished for a stronger join, when putting in a lot of drain pipe. The floor manager, Doug, frowned a little. Yes, but that would require a big change in the heating process. Could you spare some time next week to help me understand if it's possible? I asked. Doug thought for a moment, while Sally and I waited. Sure, he said. How about tomorrow at 10? That works for me, I replied with a smile. Sally let out a sigh of relief, saying, I'm looking forward to it. As we walked away, Sally took a deep breath. Terry smiled as he listened to Sally. You did great, she said. What do you mean? He replied. Doug usually gets upset when people suggest changes to his work. He has been leading the PVC floor project for a long time. But when you asked him to sit down and talk, it showed him that you value his skills. I don't know him well and he doesn't know me. I just thought we could work together to improve our product, Terry said. Keep that attitude and you'll succeed as the quality leader, Sally said. Over the next few weeks, they had many meetings with Doug about different products. Once he noticed that Terry truly wanted his thoughts, Doug shared many ideas. They made small, smart changes that improved quality without increasing material costs. At the end of his first month, Terry returned home. He was beginning to feel that William's house was his own home. Melody came to greet him and gave him a light kiss on the cheek. What was that for? He asked. Does someone need a reason to show care? She replied, with a smile. No, but it felt more specific than just that, Terry said. Melody paused, surprised. Yes, it was a thank you, but it was for work. Even Doug has been telling others how well you are doing, which is impressive. I just want to do a good job. Your parents took a chance on me, and I hope to help improve our products with my experience, Terry explained. Melody shook her head, taking his hand as they walked inside. She led him to the couch and sat down beside him. It's more than that. We've had many plumbers, but most think they know everything. You listen and value everyone's input. Every day, I see why my parents wanted you here. She blushed slightly. You're just a great fit. Terry laughed, not knowing how to respond as Melody leaned against him. Since meeting her and Harmony, he felt a special bond growing. Though he still felt pain from his past, their kindness made it easier to heal. I had a problem. I liked both Melody and Harmony and could picture a future with either of them. They had both told me several times that they wanted to be with me. Having them both stay over and share some fun moments made me think about a relationship with both of them. We had been sitting quietly for about 15 minutes when Melody noticed I seemed lost in thought. Terry, are you okay? It seems like you are dealing with something that isn't about your family, she said. I shook my head and held her a bit tighter with my good arm. No, I'm just thinking about everything that has happened lately. Carol and Mackenzie hurt me a lot. And your parents have been like a second family to me during this tough time. I have to admit I'm happier than I expected to be, but there are still a few things I need to sort out. Like what? She asked. Feelings mostly. I can't put it all into words just yet. A lot has changed over the past year, more than I ever imagined. It makes me wonder what comes next and how I really feel about everything. I could tell she was trying to understand, but I struggled to look her in the eyes. I think I get it, she replied. Going through such pain, then changing everything in your life, would be so overwhelming. She gave me a quick kiss on the cheek. Then you help two girls in trouble only to find out they are your new boss's daughters, and to top it off, both girls feel a connection with you and are okay with it. I nodded as she touched my cheek. Trust me, I understand. If I were in your place, I would feel confused too. I finally looked up and met her gaze, giving a small nod. Just then she pulled away from our hug and glanced toward the door. At that moment, Harmony walked in, just returning home from her shift at the clinic. We paused briefly, exchanged greetings, and she sat down beside me, sensing the serious mood. Melody continued. Terry, please know that we're here for you. Both Harmony and I will not leave you or cut you out of our lives. In the short time you've known our family, you've done so much for us, often without even realizing it. Mom and Dad think very highly of you, she blushed. And Harmony and I, well, we might be developing feelings for you. Her face showed a lot of vulnerability, and when I glanced at Harmony, she too was blushing, sharing a similar look. I know, girls. The more time I spend with both of you, I took their hands and gave them a gentle squeeze. The nightmare for Carol and Mackenzie was slowly fading away. They squeezed my hands gently. I just don't know what everyone will think when I introduce my girlfriends and then say they're identical twins, I said. Melody chuckled. First of all, stud. Every guy you meet will be jealous of you. They'll probably give you high fives and celebrate you for ages. We all laughed together. Harmony added, Terry, I see your point, but we can help in some ways. How about we invite your parents, sister, and brother-in-law to visit for the weekend? It will be great for you to see them in person, and you can introduce us as your girlfriends to see their reaction. Martha laughed from the doorway where she had been listening for a while. That sounds like a fantastic idea, Harmony. And just to share my thoughts, I think your relationship is sweet. As a mother, I never imagined I'd see both my daughters fall for the same guy without any drama. But somehow, what you three have makes sense to William and me. We all took a moment to think about it. Terry, my girls love you, and William and I see you as the son we never had. We'll figure things out as we go, but right now dinner will be ready in a few minutes, so you all need to tidy up. The girls took me to my room and helped me get ready for a shower. We shared a few playful moments, but soon we realized dinner was almost ready, so we had to pause everything. After dinner, we called my parents, Sister Kim, and her husband Paul, to invite them to come visit on a Friday in about a month for a long weekend with us. From that evening on, Melody, Harmony, and I became nearly inseparable. Often after work, Melody and I would go into town to pick up Harmony after her shift at the clinic or hospital, wherever she was working that day. Luckily, most of her shifts lined up with regular working hours, so we shared many meals together. I discovered that we had some similarities in different ways. For example, Melody and I both loved lasagna, while Harmony and I enjoyed Kraken rum. Melody was also a big fan of Star Wars, while Harmony preferred Marvel movies. I loved watching them chat about movies and share their interests. I wasn't as excited about it as they were, but I did like good action movies, especially sci-fi. I noticed that Melody liked to wear more colorful shoes and wraps, while Harmony chose simpler outfits, but liked to show a bit more leg. Occasionally, the girls would switch clothes to try to trick me, but it never worked. One time, we were at our favorite Italian restaurant. The girls stepped away to go to the restroom, and while they were gone, a staff member we knew came over to chat with me about the upcoming country fair. When the girls returned, I could tell he was impressed by them. They really stood out. As they sat down, he noticed Harmony's outfit and asked her a question. "Harmony, is your family going to this year's country fair?" She said yes, and talked for a few minutes about the event. I couldn't help but laugh as I watched them. The three of them looked at me, curious. "What is it, Terry?" one of the girls in Melody's clothes asked. "I'm sorry, George," I said to our waiter, "but the girls have been trying to play a joke on me. You've been talking to Melody, not Harmony." Their eyes went wide in surprise. "How did you know?" George asked. I shrugged. "It's hard to explain, but they feel different to me." "Really?" "Yeah. I guess I just have a way of telling." Melody smiled at Harmony and said, "We'll see about that." Harmony gave her a playful grin back. In the month leading up to my family's visit, the girls kept trying to trick me into thinking they were each other. Sometimes they acted like themselves but tried to behave differently. Other times, they swapped clothes or tried to change things up. Once, Harmony came to work dressed as Melody. I let her try for a while before asking her to complete a challenging task that only Melody would know how to do. "Your dad needs this report in an hour," I told her. I could see her trying not to show that she was worried about being found out. She thought she had me fooled this time. "Sure, it will be ready," she said confidently. "Great. Oh, and by the way." "Yes?" "You might want to call Melody for help with it." I walked away, laughing. William saw me laughing as I left Melody's office, with Harmony looking caught. He raised his eyebrows, signaling me to come closer. "What has my daughter done now?" "Nothing. The girls tried to pull a fast one on me again. They thought I wouldn't catch on, so I planned my day to figure it out." "You noticed that?" "Yeah. From the moment Harmony got in the car pretending to be Melody, I knew. I kept asking her to do more things here in the office. Until I gave her a job only Melody would know how to do." We laughed about that for a little while. I had a feeling they were up to something. Normally, I wouldn't allow that in business. But since I know you, and how you get along with the girls, I wanted to see what would happen. He paused and glanced at me. "You know, very few people can tell the girls apart, even up close. But almost right away, you knew which one was which." He got up, went to a cabinet in the back of his office, and returned with a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. It was a bit before lunchtime, and it wasn't unusual for William to do this with a manager. Still, considering our conversation, I wondered where it was going. He poured us both a drink. "I guess it's time to ask how you're finding things here." His question surprised me a little. I thought we would keep talking about the girls and my growing bond with his daughters. Instead, I smiled as I took a sip of my drink. "Honestly, I love it. The people are wonderful, the work is engaging, and I feel like I'm making a difference for my fellow plumbers. I can't thank Martha and you enough for this chance. You helped me when I was really struggling, and I hope I'm meeting your expectations." A sudden thought crossed my mind, reminding me that it wasn't all perfect. "Why is that, William? Have I not been meeting your goals?" He chuckled, glancing at his glass, which was already a third full. "Quite the opposite, Terry," he said, looking up at me. "Everyone loves you. You care and listen. You don't yell at people. And when you see a chance to improve our quality, you involve the right people and share recognition. Our previous quality manager, Tom, was liked but very set in his ways. You've brought in so many fresh ideas that I think we'll need to look for new growth projects before the end of next quarter, at least double what we were expecting." He paused and gazed at me thoughtfully, the kind of look bosses give their staff. It wasn't a stern evaluation, but more of a genuine reflection. "Honestly, we all appreciate you here, and I hope we are meeting your standards. In some ways, talking to you is easier than talking to others, because we are so close." I nodded. "In other ways, it's much harder." I watched him take a bigger sip of his drink. There wasn't much left in his glass now. "What I mean is that ever since you helped the girls, I can see how connected the three of you are. I know they spend most nights in your room. It's hard not to notice the bond between you." He sighed. "Terry, I'll be honest. When I look at you, I see the son I never had. But it's tough seeing the three of you together. They are my girls, after all." He trailed off. It was my turn to take a big sip. The drink felt warm as it went down. I thought for a moment about what to say. I had known William for just over a year, and I knew this topic was difficult for both of us. I sighed. "You're right, William. My feelings for both of them grow every day. Even today's little trick they pulled on me made me feel special." William looked at me. "I thought it was funny, but you feel loved by them for trying to play a joke on you?" He raised an eyebrow. "When I was a kid, my older sister Kim used to tease me like all older siblings do. It was never mean, but she pushed me to be better. She challenged me to find the truth when she picked on me. She helped me and was always there when I needed her. I feel the same way with Melody and Harmony. We spend a lot of time talking. And yes, we've shared our fair share of hugs." He gave me a stern look, that protective instinct showing, but then he softened and waited for me to go on. "For the past month, the girls have been trying to trick me in different ways to make me think it was each other. Even today, they never denied it, and they always had a smile or sparkle in their eyes. They may have been testing me, but they would never do it to hurt me. Every evening, they check in with me, making sure they haven't gone too far or hurt my feelings. I never got that kind of kindness from Carol or Mackenzie." I looked down at my drink. I know I'm still hurt by what Carol and Mackenzie did, but Melody and Harmony have helped a lot of that pain fade away. I know I have more feelings to sort and some disagreements to face with my past family. It's just. "Just what? Terry?" William encouraged. No, I know. I'm falling in love with both of them." I let my shoulders drop, admitting this to their father. It sealed one hurt from my past, but opened another since I was in love with two sisters and sharing it with their dad. They are both different. Yet when I look at either of them, I feel incomplete without both. I looked at William as he swirled the last bit of whiskey in his glass, thinking about what I just said. "I need to say sorry, William. I probably shouldn't have shared this with you. I know how much family means to you, and it can't be easy for you to hear this from me." He let out a small laugh, similar to one he made back at the hospital when our doctor was being difficult. It seemed like he came to a decision in his mind. "You're right, Terry. I love my daughters more than anything. There isn't anything I wouldn't do for them. Martha and I have been watching you all for the past few months. It's not the easiest thing, but Terry," he paused for a moment, "they want you. Melody doesn't want you on her own. She wants you with Harmony too. From what they've shared with us, it's clear they both care for you. It might seem unusual, but if it makes my girls happy, I won't get in the way. Sure, it's hard for you to say this, but I think you might be struggling with it more than anyone. You love both girls completely. Can I give you a piece of advice?" I nodded while taking another sip of the nice whiskey. "Just let it be for now. Those girls know what they want. When they decide to work together, there aren't many things that can hold them back, not even their mom and me. I've watched you, and I believe that whatever happens, the three of you will always stay close. I smiled slightly. William, I have to say that you're pretty relaxed about this, especially for a father talking to a potential partner for your daughters. Terry, since they became teenagers, I could count on one hand how many boys they've dated. If one shows interest, the other makes sure to check him out. This is the first time they seem to agree on someone. Honestly, I like you. If you end up with my girls, I'll be happy because I know you're a good person. After everything you faced with Carol and Mackenzie, I trust you wouldn't hurt either of them. We talked for a little while longer, and when we stood to leave for the production area, we heard footsteps quickly moving away from the office door. When we opened it, we saw two girls with red hair quickly retreating into Melody's office. We peeked inside and saw that Melody was with Harmony. Both looked a bit shy. I wondered how much they had overheard. The weekend my family visited was a mix of emotions for me. They admired the house and joked a bit about my growing friendship with the girls. We had a fun time sharing stories from the past. Everyone heard tales from my childhood, and Kim shared funny stories about how she used to tease me in school. We also fondly remembered family moments with Mackenzie as we grew up. By the end, I felt a bit sad. Still, those were good memories, even if some of them were made bitter by what others had done. Suddenly, a serious moment hit me. My mom, Josephine, had been quiet all evening, but then she spoke up, and everyone else stopped talking. Terry, we need to tell you something. A few months ago, around the time of your divorce, I wasn't feeling well. We had some tests done, and we've just had them checked again. I had a bad feeling and noticed tears in my parents' eyes, but Mom kept going. I have cancer. There are many things in life that can upset you, and I had faced a few. However, hearing that my mother had cancer was something I wasn't ready for. Mom, this sounds silly, but are you sure? My dad, John, jumped in. Yes, son, we're sure. From what we understand, it's a rare type of bone cancer. There are treatments available. We don't know what the future holds, but we wanted you to know. My dad, who had been my rock all my life, had tears rolling down his face, I must admit. Everyone else did too. For the next hour, we all sat together. Harmony went inside to get her tablet and asked Mom and Dad for details so she could look up information on the cancer and its treatments. She spent a few minutes searching through reliable medical sites and shared some good news about the treatments and their success rates, which were relatively high. As the heavy conversation came to an end, everyone began to head to their rooms. Since tomorrow was Saturday, we planned to go into town after a late breakfast for some shopping. Soon, it was just Kim, Paul, Melody, Harmony, and me, along with the leftover jug of sangria that Martha had made earlier. So, how is Mom really doing, Kim? I asked. She's heartbroken, little bro, Kim replied sadly. I've known for just a few more days than you, and I have cried myself to sleep more than once. This is Mom. I know, I nearly yelled. After everything this past year, I was hoping we would get a break. I felt Melody take my hand, and Harmony took my other hand. I looked at Harmony. I know cancer is serious, but how serious is this one? I asked her. She paused for a moment before answering. It's pretty rare, from what I can tell. If caught early enough, it can be less of a worry. It can progress quickly in later stages, especially since it can affect the bone marrow. I guess I will need to tell Carol and Mackenzie soon. I slumped forward. Out of all the tough talks ahead, that one would be the hardest. Kim looked at me. Not yet, Terry. They can wait until we learn more about Mom's treatment. I sensed she had more to say. What else is on your mind, Kim? She met my gaze and sighed. A lot of that feeling was happening lately. After you moved a few months ago, it took less than a week for Mackenzie to reach out to Mom and Dad and want to see them. And you didn't tell me because? Well, at that time, you had just had your accident and were recovering with help from your friends here. She smiled at the girls. We thought it was best to keep that from you until you recovered. I gulped and shot a look at Kim. She raised her hands in defense. Terry, we weren't trying to keep secrets. It just didn't come up while you were getting better. So what happened? Mom and Dad were upset. They really didn't like what Carol did to you, and they felt let down by Mackenzie, but they still loved her, so they agreed to meet her. The guy, Stephen, brought Mackenzie over. She called him her new dad, and Mom nearly lost her temper. Kim gave me a sad smile. Their meeting lasted only a few minutes. Dad asked the guy to wait outside, and when he insisted that Mackenzie wouldn't go into a house without him, Dad told them to leave. Mackenzie cried and said it wasn't fair. She was upset she hadn't seen them on her birthday and hadn't received her gifts. At that point, Mom exploded and told Mackenzie pretty much what you said, that she was being selfish. Mom expressed how disappointed she was to have lost a caring granddaughter and how ashamed she felt about what had happened to you. Mom actually said that? I was surprised. She rarely used harsh words. Yeah, Dad chuckled when he told me, but you could see there was no real joy in his eyes. Anyway, after that, Dad asked them to leave again. They got into the guy's BMW, and as they drove off, he gave Dad and Mom a rude gesture out the window. That was the last they heard from them. He sounds terrible, Melody exclaimed. Well, he's not having an easy time at the hospital right now, Kim explained, sharing how he was on probation with no bonuses for 2 years because of his treatment of me. I also heard he has a trust fund. It seems they have little money left. For the past few months, Carol and he have not been living within their means. I sniffed in disbelief. Well, they've been deceiving me with Mackenzie's approval for years, so I don't care if things are tough for them. In fact, I hope it really is. Kim let out a real laugh for the first time in ages. She looked at my girlfriends and spoke. Hey girls, can I speak to my brother alone for a bit? Sure, Kim, Harmony replied and stood up to hug me. Melody followed with her own hug. Paul kissed Kim, and the girls linked arms with him as they walked inside. We watched them go in, both of us smiling at Paul, who looked a bit awkward being with the 2 girls while his wife looked on. Terry, besides Mom's news, I have a few other things to share. I sensed worry creeping in. I wasn't sure I could handle more bad news tonight. Don't worry, little brother. It's mostly good news. I waited for her to continue. You're going to be an uncle. I nearly leaped over the table to hug her. She explained that they were a bit over 12 weeks along but hadn't shared the news due to my accident and recovery. I felt a bit annoyed, but understood. We talked for a few more minutes. I could see she was excited but also nervous about becoming a parent. But a few minutes later, her tone changed. Terry, there's something else. Carol has filed a complaint against you about the university money. She and her partner insist it belongs to them. They say it's all for Mackenzie's education, but who knows? I shrugged as I looked at my sister. I'm not surprised, Kim. When I left, and I got to express my feelings to Carol, I sensed she wasn't really upset about what I said. She just wanted the money. Everything else was just talk. What do you think? I replied to the courts and mentioned the divorce details. I don't expect much from it, but you should know. She looked at me with concern. I assume you haven't used the money? Not at all. My salary is nearly double what's in that account. Plus, there's a significant bonus that William is discussing with me. And also, I waved my hand around. I'm living here almost rent-free. I tried offering William and Martha rent money, but they refuse, saying they don't want it. Kim laughed. Speaking of that, what's really going on with you and them? She asked with a playful look. Kim and I had always shared a close bond. When she got serious with Paul years ago, I was her go-to person. Even before my struggles with Carol and Mackenzie, Kim always understood me. Honestly, I thought it would take a long time for me to feel anything again, but when I see them, I feel a spark that I never felt with Carol. You mean one of them, right? Kim asked. No, Kim. I mean both. I have feelings for both of them. We all have our preferences, but I care for both of them equally. It's all growing at the same pace, and I can't imagine starting something with one without hurting the other. We've been discussing it among the three of us, and the girls both say they want to be together, not just with one of us. I can't see them separately in my mind. Kim looked at me for a moment. It had been a while since my sister really took the time to study me, but I could feel it now. Terry, I'm not sure I have the best advice, but I can tell you that both girls seem to feel the same way about you. We sat in silence for a moment. Have you been intimate with them yet? She asked. I almost choked on my drink. Kim, she laughed. I mean it. Have you spent the night with them? Well, sort of. Most nights they fall asleep beside me and they help me out while I recover, I said, feeling a bit shy about the memories. But no, I haven't been intimate with either of them yet. Why not? I looked at my sister. Come on, I'm one person, and there are two sisters. That just feels complicated. She waved away my concern. Listen, if I'm right, both girls care a lot about you. I've seen the way they look at you, how they touch you. They understand what you're feeling, which is why they are being honest with you. If you could see both of them, and they are all right with it, then who is to judge? These days, anything seems to be accepted. Part of me liked the idea of being with the two wonderful sisters, and more than once, I had fallen asleep thinking about that as we lay together. I'm not sure, Kim. It doesn't feel like me. Come on, little brother. I saw your face just now. You were thinking of having both of them close to you in bed. I'm sure of it. I felt myself blush. Kim usually knew what I was thinking. I'm not saying that it's not a nice thought, but still. Terry! What? This is much more than just a crush. I can see it in their faces. Even now, I can see it in your eyes. It's more than just a dream. You are genuinely falling for both of them, aren't you? I paused and stared at my drink. Yes. Then you need to take action. I know you're feeling a bit lost because of Carol and Mackenzie. But from what I've seen tonight, they feel the same way about you. So please, Terry, do something. I looked at Kim and took a sip from my glass. Kim, I'm a bit nervous. I don't want to lose either of them. I don't think they realize how much they both mean to me. We do everything together. If I'm out, I'm with them. If I'm home, I'm with them. I don't want to mess this up. For me, it's like a big risk. Kim chuckled. Oh, my dear brother, you really care, don't you? I smiled for the first time. Yeah, I guess I do. I care about both of them a lot. It felt good to share this with Kim. Listen, Terry, I have some sisterly advice for you. First, take action because if I'm right, and I usually am, they won't wait much longer for you to make a move. What do you mean by that? Just a feeling I have. But I think they are getting ready to take charge. She grinned. We talked about the girls for a little longer until Paul came out to tell Kim it was time for bed. He wanted to make sure my sister got enough rest. So we went inside, and both Melody and Harmony came down. They were wearing comfortable nightgowns that didn't fit tightly, but I could see they weren't wearing anything underneath. They hugged Kim and Paul and said goodnight before pulling me to my room and helping me into bed. They climbed in next to me and held me close. "Good night, Terry," Harmony said softly, kissing me gently. "Good night, Terry," Melody said, echoing her sister's words and giving me a kiss too. The next morning, I woke up to find Melody resting on my shoulder, breathing softly as if she was still asleep. Harmony was awake on my other side, looking straight at me with her bright green eyes. They were both snuggled under the sheets with me, and I could feel their warmth. As I opened my eyes, I noticed Harmony watching me smile. "Good morning, sleepyhead," she said. I smiled back, and my words stirred Melody awake. She turned a bit and kissed my chest, trying to get closer. I felt her beside me, and Harmony turned a bit red and spoke. "Terry, we need to tell you something," Harmony said. "Okay?" Melody lifted her head and sighed. Then, responding to the question, I noticed how they seemed to understand each other well. "We were in my old room last night when you were talking to Kim. We heard the end of your conversation about us." Suddenly, I felt a wave of embarrassment and wanted to pull away. "Terry," Harmony said as Melody gently held me in place, "we're sorry for listening in, but Kim is right. We both really care about you. In the months since you saved us, our friendship grew into something deeper. Both of us, though unique in our ways, share feelings for you that go beyond just friendship. Last night, when Kim mentioned the idea of you dating both of us, we realized that in many ways, you already do with the way you treat us." Melody continued. "When we heard what you told Kim about how unsure you were, we knew it was time to speak up. We've talked about this for a while. We're sisters and twins, and we both care about you. So we wanted to ask, do you feel the same?" She looked at me with hopeful eyes, her expression sincere and bright. "Yes," I said, looking at both of them, finally letting down my guard. They smiled, leaning in closer. "But how would that even work?" Melody chuckled. "Always thinking of the details first," she teased. Harmony laughed too, and her hand rested gently on mine. "Terry, we've thought this through. We're comfortable with this, and we're okay sharing. We've always looked out for each other. We just wanted to be open about our feelings so we could all figure this out together." I felt my face warm as I processed their words, realizing how serious they were. "Well," I said finally, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. "Having the love and care of two amazing people is a rare gift. But what about everyone else? What will they think?" Melody shrugged with a grin. "Mom's already aware. She's seen how close we've become, and while she's cautious, she trusts us to make the right choices." Before I could respond, Harmony leaned in and gave me a heartfelt kiss, filled with a warmth I'd never experienced before. It was a gentle, honest moment, and as we pulled away, Melody leaned in, her expression full of affection, and we shared another brief, tender kiss. In that moment, I knew we had started something special, and we were ready to take things one step at a time, together. When she pulled back, I looked at both girls, now my girls, and saw no hint of jealousy in their eyes. "You felt it with both of us just now, didn't you?" Melody asked. "Yes, I did. I don't fully understand it, but there was something special with both of you. I've never felt this way before, even with my ex-wife." For the next 10 minutes, we shared soft kisses and gentle touches, enjoying the closeness. Harmony's hand moved in a way that made me aware of her affection, and I could feel the warmth between us when there was a knock at the bedroom door. It startled us a little, and we pulled back slightly. "Terry, can I come in?" It was Martha. "Sure, Martha." If this was going to happen, it was better for all of us to get used to it, including family. Martha opened the door and walked in. She paused when she saw the girls with me, but then smiled and sat at the end of my bed. "It's okay, girls. Your father and I have noticed the three of you for weeks now, and William mentioned that he spoke with Terry the other day. But girls," she said, looking at her daughters, "if this goes forward, I do not want to hear either of you complaining about the other. Do we understand?" "Yes, Mum," they both replied together. "And Terry?" I felt my heart race. I sensed she had something to say. "Yes, Martha?" Her expression turned serious. "While I know you are a good man, don't think for a second that I won't protect my daughters fiercely if you ever hurt them." I nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "It's okay, Terry. I would say this to any of my girls' friends. Remember, you three might make quite a stir in town. Breakfast will be ready soon, so please get up and join everyone else." With that, Martha left the room. "A stir in town, huh?" I said, looking at the girls. "Just a little one," Melody giggled and kissed me. "Well, I'd say it's a memorable stir," Harmony added, sitting up and smiling brightly. We shared a few more moments together before the girls got up. As they began to dress, I enjoyed the moment, but when they turned, I felt a bit shy about getting out of bed as we all got ready. Breakfast was delicious, with bacon, eggs, hash browns, and spinach, plus plenty of coffee. The girls sat next to me, sharing several meaningful glances, but no one said anything, enjoying the quiet time together. Kim smiled at me during breakfast, and afterward she caught me outside while everyone else got ready. "With how those two are acting around you this morning, it seems like you took my advice and made your move, huh?" "Actually, no," she tilted her head and looked curiously at me. "But what I just saw," I grinned back. "They were listening to our conversation last night from upstairs." I pointed to Harmony's old bedroom window. "They took it upon themselves to approach me when I woke up and found myself in a cozy situation." No. Before you ask, nothing happened because we were interrupted. But we all feel there's something special between us, and we want to see where it goes. She laughed. "My brother, the charm magnet, moves from a tough breakup to two wonderful women who truly care. But Terry..." "Yes? Be careful, okay?" "I will, Kim." The next few days were wonderful with the family. William set up a hot lap for Dad, Paul, and me at the Bathurst supercar track, while the girls enjoyed a day spa. I hadn't had so much fun in years. There was no pressure, no need to rush anywhere. Just a relaxed time, where everyone could enjoy themselves. When we were all back together, the girls would cling to me whenever they could, sometimes together and sometimes separately. It felt nice to be appreciated. When my family returned to Maitland, I promised to come up for the weekend in a couple of months when Mom had her first cancer treatment. I also planned to catch up with a few friends and sort out some legal matters regarding Carol and Mackenzie. As the girls and I continued to build our relationship, they often spent their nights in my room. Many nights we would all sleep comfortably together, and I often woke up feeling close to them. As identical twins, they shared a striking resemblance, and we all felt a strong bond growing day by day. I found myself developing feelings for both of them, which confused me a bit, but I realized I cared for each of them in different ways. Everything changed the Wednesday night before I was set to return to Maitland. After dinner, William, Martha, the girls, and I settled in the living room, each with a book to relax. The conversation was light, and the mood was easygoing. Harmony was reading Pride and Prejudice and laughed. I glanced at her. Her eyes sparkled with happiness. I playfully nudged her leg with my foot, and she turned to look at me. "I love you," I said without thinking, and everything seemed to freeze. It took me a moment to realize I had just spoken my feelings aloud, and I felt a bit shocked. I hesitated, glancing at Melody, who looked at me with wide eyes as if she sensed something important was happening. "No. What I really want to say is that I love both of you." It was time to be honest and share what was in my heart. "Melody and Harmony, ever since you came into my life, I have felt happier than I ever thought possible. Having two amazing girlfriends who love me and let me love you back is more than I ever dreamed." I leaned towards Melody. "I love you, Melody." And I pulled her in for a kiss. Then I turned to Harmony. "I love you, Harmony." And I kissed her as well. It felt a little strange. William and Martha were watching us. We hadn't kissed in front of anyone else until that moment. The girls had set their books aside and melted into my embrace. Both of them looked at me with sweet expressions. William cleared his throat. "Terry, it's okay. I think we've all talked enough to understand what's going on. This is new for all of us. Just take care of my girls, please. I certainly don't want Martha to feel the need to sell you off." His light joke broke the tension, and we all laughed. We put our books down and spent the next hour talking openly about our relationship. I expressed once again how I had fallen for both of them, and the girls told me they loved me, too. That night, as we settled down, I tucked into my girls, and they held me close, their kisses gentle and sweet. Just as I thought we were all drifting off to sleep, Harmony spoke up. "Terry?" "Yes?" "I want you to be with Melody first." I was drifting off, feeling cherished, but suddenly I was wide awake. "Sorry?" She smiled at me, lying on my left, while Melody rested on my right against my chest. We both looked over at Harmony. "I know it's only a matter of time before we fully share ourselves with you, and I've been thinking about it, but I want you to be with Melody first." I reached out to caress her cheek. "Why, Harmony?" "Because Melody hasn't been with anyone before, and I have." I looked over at Melody, and she nodded. Harmony went on. "As you know, Melody and I haven't dated much before. We usually looked out for each other when it came to boys until you came along." I nodded, remembering what William and the girls had told me. "When we were 19, I had a boyfriend named Chad." Melody frowned while Harmony blushed. "Chad and I dated for about 6 months while I was at nursing school. Even though Melody didn't approve of him, I kept seeing him. One night after we went to a party and had a few drinks, things got out of hand. The next morning, I woke up alone in an unfamiliar room, feeling confused and unsure of what had happened. I got dressed and started looking around for Chad, hoping to understand more. Eventually, I found him in another room, asleep beside someone else. I felt used and heartbroken, and I left the place immediately, returning home where I spent a few days in my room, processing what had happened. Melody and Mom helped me through that time, offering support and helping me heal. Chad never reached out again, and though I later saw him around campus, he avoided me. I had a feeling that my parents might have had something to do with him staying away, but I never asked, and we never discussed that night again. I reached over to comfort Harmony, letting her know she could trust me. Melody, sitting nearby, offered her support as well. Harmony nodded, a few quiet tears slipping down her cheeks, and she gave me a grateful smile. "I know you care about me," she said softly, "and I want you to share that with Melody too." "Of course," I replied. We all shared a moment of understanding, promising to take things one step at a time, with respect and kindness for each other. I knew that together we'd support each other through any challenges ahead. I looked over at Harmony, her face showing a mix of emotions, but I kept my focus on Melody, who was also visibly moved by the moment. "Melody," I said softly, encouraging her gently. She looked at me with some nervousness but also trust. Taking a deep breath, she relaxed, and I reassured her with a gentle smile. The moment was filled with tenderness, and as I moved closer, I could feel the warmth between us growing. Melody's eyes closed, and I could see her anticipation and trust. I kissed her softly, moving in a way that showed my care and affection. Each touch was slow, gentle, and meaningful, focused on making her feel cherished. The connection between us deepened, and I could tell Melody was feeling the love and respect I had for her. Her hands gripped the sheets. Her breathing quickened, and a look of joy and relief washed over her as she felt truly cared for. I glanced at Harmony, who was watching us with warmth in her eyes. She gave me a small smile, silently expressing her love and support for her sister and for me. The bond between us all felt real, honest, and without words. Melody's face softened with a deep contentment, and she held me close, her breathing slowly calming down. She whispered, "Thank you. I feel so safe and loved with you." I smiled back, knowing we'd all shared something meaningful, something that was more than words could express. We lay together, embracing the comfort and peace we had created, knowing our friendship and connection would only grow stronger. After a quiet moment, Melody nudged me gently and gave Harmony a meaningful look. I looked over to see Harmony lying comfortably on the other side of the bed, smiling warmly. She seemed calm, her face softened with trust and affection. I felt a deep urge to reassure her. I leaned in and held her hand, looking into her eyes. "Harmony, I'm here for you, always. You both mean so much to me, and I want you to know how special you are to me." I hugged her, and then shared a gentle kiss, showing my care and support. Each gesture was slow and thoughtful, aiming to make her feel valued and appreciated. She seemed to relax more, her eyes shining with gratitude. Melody was nearby, giving us space, but clearly happy that we were all sharing in this moment together. Harmony looked over at her sister, and they exchanged a look of understanding. After a few moments, she said with a soft smile, "We're all in this together, and we're here for each other." We shared a few quiet, heartfelt moments, just enjoying the warmth of each other's presence. The room was filled with a sense of peace and mutual care, and we all lay back, feeling a strong bond between us. In that comfortable silence, it was clear that our friendship and connection had deepened, and we felt closer than ever. For a while, we just lay there, side by side, grateful for each other's presence and the trust we had built. There was no rush, only a sense of happiness and belonging. We knew that we would face whatever came next together, one step at a time, as friends and as people who truly cared for each other. In their quiet moment together, Melody and Harmony shared a lighthearted exchange, showing how comfortable they were with each other and with me. Their laughter filled the room, and I couldn't help but smile along with them, feeling a warm sense of belonging. As we continued to enjoy each other's company, their playfulness created a calming, joyful atmosphere. Harmony looked over with a bright smile. "You're pretty special to both of us," she said softly, her eyes full of warmth. The light, teasing, and laughter continued, creating an unforgettable feeling of closeness between us. The trust and openness we shared reminded me of how much these two meant to me, and I felt deeply grateful for the friendship and bond we were building together. As we lay back, a peaceful silence settled over us. We all shared a quiet, heartfelt moment, simply being there for each other and letting the warmth of friendship and care wrap around us. We knew that whatever came next, we'd face it together, taking one step at a time, with the same trust and respect that had brought us here. This was a moment of true connection, and we lay there, grateful for each other's presence, ready for the journey ahead. While it's easy to think we can do everything, I had to take a break after a few minutes. "So good," she whispered, as I paused, still close to her. "But now, you need to focus on my sister." As I pulled away, I felt her get ready as I lined up with Harmony. I entered her slowly but steadily. Before long, she pulled me closer and kissed me just like Melody had. I started to move gently again, picking up the pace. But I knew I couldn't keep going forever, and I could feel that I was getting close to the end. Finally, I stopped and leaned in closer to Harmony. "Are you okay?" I asked. She kissed me again. "Are you kidding? You're amazing. We never want you to leave this bed if this is what it's like." We all laughed, and I noticed Melody moving closer to us. I was still very much connected to her sister, as she kissed my neck. "Melody, help him feel good. I want him to enjoy this again." Melody did, and it made a big difference. I had to pull away quickly, feeling a surge of excitement as Melody helped me make the most of it. Afterward, we relaxed. We all went to the shower, helped each other get clean, and changed the sheets before falling asleep in a happy pile. I couldn't help but think about how different this was from my time with Carol. With Carol, we had fun, but it never felt as deep as what I shared with Melody and Harmony. I guess I was comparing things after all. I found it interesting that there was no jealousy between the sisters. Even without being physically close, they encouraged each other with me. I fell asleep feeling like the luckiest person in the world. The next day, William and Martha looked at us with smiles. They didn't say anything, but they seemed to know. Given the happiness on our faces, it was pretty clear we had moved forward in our relationship, even if they didn't hear anything the night before. We had one more night together before I drove to Maitland. I wish I could say we repeated the previous night, but it was different. We shared a loving moment, and I made sure both my partners felt happy before falling asleep. Still, we felt a bit sad that I would be away for a few nights right after taking that big step together. The drive back to Maitland was smooth. The skies were clear, no storms in sight, and the radio played country songs about young love and life's joys. I arrived at my parents' house a few hours earlier than planned, and they were already home from the hospital. Mom looked a bit weak, and her eyes were red from crying. I gave her a big hug, and we talked while I made everyone a cup of tea. Eventually, they asked about the girls, and I blushed as I told them that we were officially together. They congratulated me and thankfully didn't ask too much about my personal life, though I think it was clear that I was close to both of them. That night I slept in the spare room, which used to be Kim's but was now set up for guests. Dad had taken my old room as his office. I video called the girls for a while before going to sleep. Harmony and Melody were still in my room, and they said it felt like I was with them while they slept because of my scent there. When I woke up around 6 the next morning, I got dressed in some comfy shorts and a t-shirt and went downstairs. Dad was already awake, reading the Saturday paper. We chatted for a few minutes, and he mentioned that Mum was still sleeping. I texted the girls, "Good morning, my beauties. I hope you slept well. Call me when you wake up." Then I offered to go into town to get coffee and breakfast wraps for Mum, Dad, and me. Dad thought it was a great idea. So I jumped in my truck and headed out. 15 minutes later, I arrived at a popular coffee shop called Maitland Central. I placed my order and sat down to wait. Since I hadn't heard from Melody and Harmony yet, I sent them another message saying I would call them in a few hours after I got breakfast. Just a few minutes later, my phone buzzed. They replied with a picture of themselves in bed, a sheet pulled up over them but nothing too revealing, along with a message. "Okay, we love you." I laughed at the picture, imagining what was happening under the sheets when I heard a voice I hoped to never hear again. "What's so funny?" Mackenzie stood in the doorway with her hands on her hips and a frown on her face that reminded me of her mother. Even though it was early, she was dressed in fancy clothes, wearing several rings and a big gold necklace. Her hair was tied up with an expensive hair accessory, and it seemed like she had on too much makeup for a 15-year-old. I noticed her mother and her new stepfather, Dr. Stephen Morrison, approaching behind her. They hadn't seen me yet, but I knew it wouldn't be long. Suddenly, my smile faded away. "Hey, everyone! Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss any of the exciting stories we have coming up. What do you think about the characters in this story? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.